My name is Adeline, and at 42, I find myself living a life far removed from the carefree dreams of my youth. My days are a relentless cycle, split between my clerical job and the dwindling family liquor store, a once thriving establishment now teetering on the edge of ruin. The store, nestled in a cozy corner of our neighborhood, had been the pride of our family for decades. It was a time when our name was synonymous with quality spirits, and our monopoly in the area was unchallenged. But as years passed, strict regulations strangled the nightlife, and our primary clientele, hotel banquet halls, pubs, and restaurants, dwindled to a mere trickle. In the midst of this decline stood my father, Harold, a man stubbornly clinging to the past. His management style, if one could call it that, was a recipe for disaster. Debts mounted, yet he persisted with his outdated methods, blind to the changing world around him. 2 years ago, in a desperate bid to salvage what was left of our legacy, I moved back into my childhood home. The liquor store, struggling to stay afloat, became my evening haunt after office hours. Each day as I stepped through its doors, the familiar jingle of the bell was a stark reminder of the burden I shouldered. "Dad, are you drinking again?" I'd often find him behind the counter, a bottle in hand, his laughter a stark contrast to the store's empty aisles. "Ha, these bottles aren't selling anyway." "Might as well enjoy them," he'd slur, the smell of alcohol heavy in the air. I'd sigh, a mix of frustration and resignation, as I set about cleaning the cluttered store and delving into the books. Our finances were a labyrinth of debts and overdue bills, a testament to years of neglect. Dinner was always a solitary affair, long past 9 p.m., after the day's tasks were done. My parents, lost in their own world, would be asleep, leaving the kitchen and the responsibility of meals to me. Every night, I'd prepare a simple meal, usually instant ramen, and then start prepping for the next morning's breakfast. My mom preferred bread, while Dad was a rice person. It was a small detail, but in our household, even the smallest preferences were my responsibility. Weekends, which should have been my respite, began at the crack of dawn, thanks to my mother, Irene. "Adeline, make your father's miso soup quickly," she'd demand, her voice cutting through any hopes of rest. "Why can't you do that, Mom?" I'd protest, only to be met with her sharp retort. "Why should I have to do the housework when you're here? Now get up." I had always been the meticulous one, the daughter who naturally took on chores and responsibilities. It started in high school, and by the time I graduated, I was the family's backbone. Tired of this endless cycle, I had taken up the office job right after school, hoping to escape. But escape, it seemed, was a luxury I couldn't afford. The liquor store's debts, a staggering $3 million, loomed over us like a dark cloud. Living frugally became second nature to me. $1 cosmetics, homemade lunches, enduring the cold to save on heating, all in a desperate bid to keep us afloat. One day, as I suggested leveraging the internet to boost sales, my father's response was as predictable as it was infuriating. "Our old way is the best way. I'm not the problem, the world is." His words echoed in my head as I juggled household chores with my attempts to rejuvenate the business. There was never enough time, always a step behind, always just out of reach of a solution. But I was determined. Against my father's resistance, I started online classes, selling rare alcohol from our store. This innovative approach was a hit, especially with restrictions limiting people's movements. Slowly, the business picked up. It was a glimmer of hope in an otherwise dark tunnel. But as our store's name gained online visibility, so too did my workload increase. Free time became a distant memory, yet I pushed on, believing it was all for the greater good. That belief, however, was about to be shattered. The rhythm of my life was an unending dance of duty and disappointment. Each day, I awoke to a world where my efforts seemed invisible to those who mattered most. My family's store, once a symbol of pride, had become a chain around my neck, dragging me down into an abyss of resentment and exhaustion. One particularly grueling evening, I found myself sifting through piles of overdue invoices, the numbers blurring before my eyes. The store was silent, save for the occasional clink of a bottle as my father, Harold, indulged in his habitual drinking. "Dad, we can't keep going like this. We're sinking," I said, my voice a mix of despair and frustration. He simply chuckled, his words slurred. "Ah, Adeline, always so serious. Relax, have a drink. It'll all work out." His nonchalance was like a slap in the face. How could he be so blind? The weight of our debts was crushing, and yet there he sat, drowning his sorrows in the very product that was supposed to be our salvation. The following morning, as I prepared breakfast, my mother, Irene, sauntered into the kitchen. "Make sure you clean the house today. Clara and her husband might visit," she ordered, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Clara, my younger sister, was the polar opposite of me. Free-spirited, carefree, she had floated through life on a cloud of whims and desires, always landing softly on the cushion of our parents' support. Even after marrying a man as aimless as herself, she continued to lean on our parents financially. As I scrubbed and cleaned, the bitter thoughts churned in my mind. Why was I the one to bear all this? Why did Clara get to live a life of leisure while I toiled away? Later that day, as Clara breezed into the store, her laughter echoed mockingly off the walls. "Oh, Adeline, still stuck in this old place? You really should get out more," she chided, her words tinged with a carelessness that stung. I bit back a sharp retort, focusing instead on the task at hand. The store, now a little busier thanks to my online efforts, demanded my full attention. But Clara's words lingered, a painful reminder of the life I could have had. That night, as I lay in bed, the exhaustion of my double life weighed heavily on me. My parents' indifference, Clara's thoughtlessness, the endless cycle of work, it was all becoming too much. A voice inside me whispered of change, of breaking free, but fear and duty held me back. The next day brought no respite. As I balanced the accounts, my mother's voice cut through the quiet. "Adeline, when are you going to settle down? You're not getting any younger, you know." I looked up, stunned. Was this really what she worried about? Not our failing business, not the crushing debt, but my marital status? "Maybe when our store isn't on the brink of collapse," I replied curtly, turning back to my work. Her scoff was the only response I received. As days turned into weeks, the strain began to take its toll. Sleepless nights, skipped meals, and constant stress left me worn and weary. But there was no time to rest, no time to breathe. The store, the house, my job, they all demanded more of me than I had to give. It was during one of these endless days that I received the news. Clara was pregnant. The family buzzed with excitement, a stark contrast to the chaos that was our reality. "That's great, the first grandchild," I managed to say, a forced smile on my lips. But my mother's next words were like a cold splash of water. "That's why you need to leave the house." I stared at her, disbelief and anger warring within me. "What? Why?" "You need to make room for Clara and her family," my father added, his tone dismissive. I was speechless. After everything I had done, sacrificed, endured, this was how they repaid me? A cold, unceremonious dismissal? The injustice of it burned my chest, a fire that threatened to consume me. But in that moment, something shifted within me. A resolve, steel and unwavering, took root. I would leave, but on my terms, and they would soon realize the true cost of their ingratitude. The decision to leave my childhood home, the epicenter of my lifelong sacrifices, didn't come easy. Yet, as I packed my belongings, each item I tucked away felt like a shard of the heavy chain I was shedding. The house, once a sanctuary of family memories, had morphed into a prison of ungrateful demands and unreciprocated toil. In the midst of my packing, my father Harold stumbled in, reeking of liquor. "What's this? Planning a little trip?" he sneered, his voice dripping with derision. I straightened up, meeting his bleary eyes with a calm I didn't feel. "I'm moving out," I stated, the words tasting like freedom. His reaction was a bitter laugh. "Moving out? And who's going to run the store? Cook and clean? You think you're irreplaceable?" His words, meant to wound, only strengthened my resolve. "You'll have to figure that out, won't you?" I replied, turning back to my packing. The following days were a whirlwind of activity. Amidst the chaos of moving and handling my office work, I still found myself drawn back to the liquor store, the pull of responsibility too ingrained to ignore. One evening, as I was tidying up the store for what felt like the last time, Clara breezed in, her carefree demeanor unchanged. "So you're really leaving us, huh?" she asked, her voice light, almost mocking. I paused, a myriad of emotions swirling within me. "Yes, Clara, I am. Someone else can shoulder the burdens now." Her laughter was a cold echo in the empty store. "Oh, Adeline, always the martyr. Don't worry, I'm sure we'll manage without you." Her words, meant to belittle, only fueled the fire in my heart. My family's true colors were glaringly evident now, selfish, uncaring, and utterly blind to the sacrifices made in their name. The night before my departure, as I sat amidst boxes of my life, a sense of surreal calm enveloped me. The years of being the dependable daughter, the responsible sister, were coming to an end. But as I looked around the room, a wave of sadness hit me. This was the home where I grew up, where I laughed and cried, where I dreamed of a future that was never mine. My mother, Irene, appeared at my door, her expression unreadable. "You don't have to do this, Adeline. We need you here." Her words, so devoid of understanding, stung. "No, Mom, you needed me. You just never realized it." The day I left, the house was silent, an eerie testament to the void I was leaving behind. My parents stood by, their expressions a mix of confusion and resentment, as I loaded the last of my things into the car. As I drove away, the familiar streets of my childhood receded in the rearview mirror. I felt a pang of loss, but more than that, a burgeoning sense of relief. I was leaving behind a life of thankless servitude, stepping into a future where my worth wasn't measured by the sacrifices I made for others. But as the distance between me and my former life grew, so did my resolve. My family, so accustomed to my constant support, would soon face the harsh reality of their own making, and I, freed from their unappreciative grasp, would finally start living for myself. Settling into my new apartment, a modest but cozy space, I felt the first true breath of freedom I had experienced in years. It was a stark contrast to the burdensome atmosphere of my parents' house. Yet, even in this newfound tranquility, the echoes of my past life haunted me. It wasn't long before the reality of my family's dependence on me became painfully apparent. My phone buzzed incessantly with calls and messages from home. Each plea for help, each demand for my return, was a reminder of the suffocating expectations I had escaped. One evening, as I was preparing a simple dinner for myself, my phone lit up with a familiar number. Bracing myself, I answered. It was my father, Harold, his voice slurred and angry. "Adeline, where are you? The store is a mess. We need you here," he barked into the phone. I clenched my jaw, the old feelings of obligation tugging at me. "Dad, I've moved out. You and Clara will have to manage on your own." His response was a string of insults and accusations, blaming me for abandoning the family in their time of need. His words were like daggers, aimed to wound, but I had grown a shield of resolve. "I'm not your crutch anymore, Dad. You'll have to stand on your own," I replied, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. The days that followed were a relentless barrage of guilt trips and emotional blackmail. My mother, Irene, played her part well, lamenting how I could leave my family in such dire straits. "You're being selfish, Adeline. Think about what you're doing to us," she implored during one of her many calls. But the years of neglect and underappreciation had hardened my heart. "I've thought about it for far too long, Mom. Now, it's time for me to think about myself." Amidst this tumult, I found solace in my work and the few friends I had kept at a distance over the years. Among them was Marcus, a colleague from the office who had always been kind, but whom I had never allowed myself to get close to. One day, after a particularly grueling call with my mother, Marcus noticed my distress. "Adeline, you okay? You've been looking really stressed lately," he said, his concern genuine. I hesitated, then decided to open up. "It's just family stuff. I recently moved out, and they're not taking it well." Marcus listened intently, offering a sympathetic ear and words of encouragement. His kindness was a balm to my weary soul. For the first time in a long while, I felt seen and understood. But the reprieve was short-lived. The stress of juggling my new life, the constant barrage from my family, and the lingering guilt took its toll. One day at work, as I sat at my desk, the room began to spin. The last thing I remember was Marcus's voice calling my name before everything went black. I awoke in a hospital bed, my head throbbing with pain. Marcus was there, his face etched with worry. "You gave us quite a scare, Adeline. You collapsed and hit your head. How are you feeling?" Tears welled up in my eyes, not from the pain, but from the overwhelming sense of care and concern I had been denied for so long. "Thank you, Marcus. I don't know what to say." Marcus squeezed my hand gently. "Don't say anything. Just focus on getting better. And maybe, when you're ready, think about making some changes. You can't keep going like this." His words resonated deep within me. For so long I had lived for others, neglecting my own well-being. it was time to make a change, to live for myself. As I lay in that hospital bed, the realization hit me hard. My family's selfishness and dependence had nearly broken me, but now I was on the path to healing and self-discovery, and I was determined to not let anyone pull me back into the abyss from which I had just crawled out. Recovering from the incident at work, I found myself at a crossroads. Marcus's words echoed in my mind, urging me to change the trajectory of my life. It was time to prioritize my health and happiness over the never-ending demands of my family. The decision was made. I would no longer be at the beck and call of my parents and Clara. This newfound resolve, however, did not stop the onslaught of calls and messages, each more desperate and manipulative than the last. One evening, as I sifted through my mail, a call from my mother, Irene, came through. Her voice was shrill, laced with panic and anger. "Adeline, you need to come back. The store is failing without you. We're struggling to keep up." Her plea was a twisted symphony of guilt and blame. "You're responsible for this mess. You can't just abandon your family." I felt a surge of anger, but it was quickly replaced by a steely calm. "No, Mom, I'm not responsible for the years of mismanagement and neglect. You and Dad made your bed. Now you have to lie in it." Her response was a mix of incredulous outrage and desperate bargaining, but I stood firm. The chains of guilt and obligation had been broken. As days turned into weeks, the frequency of their calls diminished, replaced by a foreboding silence. I immersed myself in my work and started exploring hobbies I had long neglected. Life was beginning to have a semblance of normalcy and peace. Then, one day, a call from Clara jolted me back to reality. Her voice was hysterical, a stark contrast to her usual carefree tone. "Adeline, you have to help us. The store is on the brink of closure. We're drowning in debt." Her words were laced with panic and a hint of realization of the gravity of their situation. But it was too late. "Clara, I warned you all. I can't fix years of mistakes and neglect. You need to figure it out," I replied, my voice void of the sympathy she sought. The call ended with Clara's sobs and pleas echoing in my ears, but they no longer had the power to sway me. My family had to face the consequences of their actions, the result of years of taking my efforts for granted. Weeks passed, and the inevitable news arrived. The family liquor store, once a cornerstone of our neighborhood, had closed its doors for good. The failure of the business was a harsh blow to my parents and Clara, a bitter taste of reality they had long avoided. I heard through mutual acquaintances about the chaos that ensued. My parents, unable to cope with their new reality, were consumed by blame and regret. Clara and her husband, faced with the harshness of responsibility, were at a loss, their illusory world shattered. There was a part of me that felt vindicated, seeing them finally reap what they had sown. But there was also a pang of sadness for what could have been if only they had appreciated and reciprocated my efforts. As I reflected on these events, I realized this was not just the end of the family business, but the end of a chapter in my life, a chapter filled with sacrifice and unacknowledged labor. Now it was time to write a new story, one where I was the protagonist of my own life. Life in my new world, unshackled from the chains of familial obligation, was a revelation. My days, once dictated by the whims and needs of my parents and Clara, were now my own. I relished the freedom, the ability to make decisions for myself without the cloud of guilt and manipulation that had hovered over me for so long. But even in this newfound paradise, the specter of my old life occasionally intruded. One day, as I was enjoying a quiet evening at home, my phone rang with an all-too-familiar number. The sight of it stirred a mix of irritation and curiosity. Bracing myself, I answered. It was my mother, Irene, her voice tinged with desperation. "Adeline, you have to come back. We're in trouble. The debt collectors are after us." Her plea, once capable of dragging me back into the mire, now fell on deaf ears. "Mom, I've told you before. I can't help you. You need to sort this out yourselves." "But we're your family. How can you abandon us like this?" she cried, the audacity of her words almost laughable. "Family?" I retorted, my voice cold. "The same family that took my efforts for granted, that kicked me out when I was no longer convenient? I think you've mistaken me for someone else." The line went dead, her silence more telling than any words could be. They were finally starting to understand the gravity of their situation, the consequences of their actions. Over the next few weeks, news of my family's plight trickled in through various channels. The once proud owners of the neighborhood liquor store were now pariahs, weighed down by debt and shunned by those they had once considered friends. My sister Clara, who had never known a day of hard work, was now facing the harsh realities of life. Her husband, equally inept at dealing with adversity, was no support. Their marriage, built on convenience and financial dependence, was crumbling under the strain. I heard about their heated arguments, their desperate attempts to find easy ways out, and their incessant blaming of each other for their downfall. It was a pitiful sight, yet a part of me felt a sense of poetic justice. They were finally experiencing a fraction of the hardships I had endured for their sake. But it was during a chance encounter at a local cafe that the full extent of their decline became apparent. Seated at a corner table, I saw my parents, haggard and worn. They were arguing, their voices a mix of anger and despair. I watched unseen as they laid bare the years of mismanagement and selfish decisions that had led to their undoing. The sight was sobering. This was the family I had left behind, a family that had never valued me until I was gone. Their downfall was of their own making, a direct result of their actions and choices. As I left the cafe, a sense of closure washed over me. I had moved on, built a life where I was valued and appreciated. The echoes of my past, though still lingering, were just that, echoes. They no longer had the power to dictate my life or my happiness. The chapter of my life, defined by thankless sacrifice and unreciprocated loyalty, was closed. Ahead lay a path of self-discovery and fulfillment, a journey I was eager to embark on. The days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, each passing moment affirming my decision to step away from the life that had once threatened to suffocate me. I had created a world for myself, a sanctuary where respect and self-care were not just ideals, but realities. In this new life, I found joy in the small things. The quiet mornings, the leisurely walks, the books I had always wanted to read but never had the time for. My job, once a mere escape from the chaos at home, now became a source of fulfillment and growth. It was during this period of tranquility that Marcus, my colleague who'd been a pillar of support, became more than just a friend. Our shared experiences at work and his unwavering kindness during my tumultuous times blossomed into a deep, meaningful relationship. One crisp autumn evening, as we walked through the park, Marcus stopped, his eyes locking with mine. "Adeline, you've changed so much since we first met. You're stronger, happier. I'm glad I've been a part of this journey with you." His words, simple yet profound, filled my heart. "Marcus, you've been my rock. I don't think I could have made it through without you." As we stood there, amidst the falling leaves, a profound sense of contentment enveloped me. I had come so far from the woman who lived only to serve the whims of her ungrateful family. However, the echoes of my past were not completely silenced. News about my family still reached me, each update a grim reminder of their continuous downward spiral. The once thriving liquor store was now a forgotten relic, its doors permanently shut. My parents, stripped of their pride and business, were a shadow of their former selves, embroiled in a never-ending cycle of blame and regret. Clara and her husband, having lost their financial safety net, were adrift in a sea of their own making. Their frivolous lifestyle, once sustained by my efforts, was now a distant memory. It was during one of my visits to the local market that I overheard a conversation about them. "Have you heard about the family that used to run the liquor store? It's a sad story. They lost everything, even their home," a woman said to her companion, shaking her head. "Yes, I heard. They say the daughter who used to do everything for them left and everything fell apart," the other replied, a tone of sympathy in her voice. I walked past them, a sense of vindication mixed with a tinge of sadness. My family had reaped what they sowed, a harsh lesson in the value of gratitude and hard work. But their fate was no longer my burden. I had released myself from the chains of their expectations and neglect. My life was now my own, a canvas on which I was free to paint my future. As I looked forward to my life with Marcus, a sense of hope and excitement filled me. We had plans, dreams to chase, a future to build together. The scars of my past would always be a part of me, but they no longer defined me. In the end, the greatest revenge was not the downfall of those who had wronged me, but the life I had built in spite of them. a life of happiness, love, and fulfillment, a life truly worth living.
I start cleaning without saying much. Then my ex-husband, James, talks to me. You're not even crying. James thought I would resist and cry when he asked for a divorce. Honestly, I thought he was selfish. I wasn't the only one who stopped loving him. Well, James, you're the one who's going to have a tougher time after the divorce. Instead of crying, I could barely stop myself from laughing. What do you mean? James, my ex-husband, asked me, looking suspicious. Between you, a housewife, and me, a successful corporate worker, you'll have a harder time after the divorce. And I plan to marry someone else while you'll be alone. Well, that might be true in a regular situation, but it looks like Emma, the woman you're cheating with, isn't exactly top-notch. Wait, how do I know her name? My name is Kate, and I'm 32 years old. I'm a housewife. I met my husband James when we were both the same age at a party. We hit it off right away, becoming good friends. James worked in sales at a trading company, making a lot more money than most people our age. Because of him, I've had a comfortable life, but our marriage had a big problem. Things weren't going well. It was a serious issue. We'd been married for 7 years already. At first, we were deeply in love, spending lots of time together and sharing meals, even when James was busy with work. But that love faded away. Take care. What about dinner? I don't need it. I'll eat out. You can go to bed first. I'll be home late. All right, got it. When we first got married, he used to say, eating together with you, Kate, is my greatest happiness. But now, it's normal for him to come home after midnight, finding me already asleep, and leaving for work without a proper talk in the morning. It's like being ignored by a teenager going through puberty. When these days became the norm, I noticed some changes in James. Did he always use this hair product? And now he has a whole bunch of skincare products and cologne. Before, he didn't care much about how he looked. He mostly wore suits and didn't have many casual clothes. But suddenly, he's buying expensive brand-name outfits. I wouldn't mind if he just decided to start caring more about his appearance. I always thought he should. But the reason for this change seems strange. Watching James closely, I started feeling suspicious. He began using his phone in secret, even taking it with him to the bathroom and shower. He used to leave it lying around, and I almost sat on it a few times, worrying I might damage it. Why has he suddenly changed so much? As James's behavior continued, my suspicions grew stronger. Was he cheating whenever he came home late? But I had no solid proof, just doubts. Despite the distance in our relationship, a part of me still wanted to believe in him. So the idea of my suspicions being true terrified me. I tried to act like everything was okay, hoping to improve our relationship. I tried to talk more and suggested going out together, but every time I reached out, I was met with indifference. I guess it's understandable. After 7 years of marriage, our relationship had been shaky for a while. Despite my efforts, feeling ignored made me feel incredibly lonely. With all this happening, my emotions started to wear thin. One night, I couldn't hold it in any longer, and I finally decided to confront James. Hey, are you cheating on me? I finally asked to James. He just looked at me, not saying a word. Come on, say something. Are you? He stayed silent for a moment. Then, without a word, he got up from the couch and came over to where I was sitting at the table. He lowered his head towards me. I'm sorry, Kate. I want a divorce. I was speechless, completely caught off guard by his unexpected confession. Ignoring my stunned silence, he went on. I've fallen in love with someone else. I want to start a new life with her. How could he say something so selfish without even thinking? What about our 7 years together? I had a feeling there was another woman, but I never expected him to drop this bombshell so suddenly. All my efforts to fix our relationship seemed pointless. Was the man I fell in love with really this heartless and selfish? When we first met, I thought he was the most amazing person in the world. I couldn't find the words to say, my mind swirling with these thoughts. Then my husband said something that made me doubt if I heard him right. The truth is, she's pregnant with my child. I want to be with her for our child's future. I felt like everything was spinning, like I was about to collapse. Everything around me seemed to turn white. We hadn't had a child in our 7 years together. We hadn't even been using protection. In fact, we had been actively trying to conceive and had sought infertility treatments. Despite our efforts, we couldn't have a child. Medical reports showed my husband had fertility issues, but he always expressed his desire for a child. So despite the challenges, we never stopped trying. I always did my best to meet his expectations. Lately, though, our relationship had lost its spark, and we stopped trying to conceive. It seems his decision to divorce was largely influenced by the fact that he was having a child with his mistress. I've always wanted a child, especially to show my mom her grandchild soon. You understand, right, Kate? So please, let's divorce. My mother-in-law had been seriously ill and hospitalized for the past 2 years. I understood his urgency to give her a grandchild. But to have a child with another woman instead of his wife, it was devastating. I wanted a child too, which is why I underwent fertility treatments. I thought we were in this together, sharing the pain of infertility. Do you even realize how selfish you're being? I yelled at him in frustration, but James just looked down, apologizing. It felt like he was waiting for the storm to pass, which only made me angrier. What kind of woman is she? Just because she's pregnant with your baby, I'm not ready to accept a divorce. I pressed James to tell me more about the woman he was involved with, but he insisted, I'm sorry, but please respect her privacy. What? How selfish can you be? As your wife, I have a right to know. Tell me everything. But no matter how much I pushed, James refused to share any significant details about her. She's 2 years younger than you, Kate, that's all. She works with me. What a joke. He must really care about her. Despite my persistence, James wouldn't give any real answers. For a few days we argued about it, but I adamantly refused to agree to a divorce on James's terms. I didn't want to give in to him so easily. Throughout our discussions, James kept apologizing and bowing his head. Please, I no longer have feelings for you. What's the point in staying married? Even my mother knows about this, and she's fine with it. Apparently, James had already spoken to my mother-in-law about our situation. That shook me. While my relationship with my mother-in-law had been strained lately, I thought we were still close. Yet, James kept dropping bombshells one after another. I've already given her an engagement ring. We're planning to live together soon. All that's left is for us to get a divorce, James revealed. I felt dizzy, like I was going to faint. My husband James was actually serious about leaving me for the woman he was cheating with, but I still couldn't bring myself to agree to a divorce. This tug-of-war between James and me went on for almost a month. When James seemed to have run out of patience, he begged on his knees. I can't do this anymore. Please just agree to the divorce. Our relationship has been broken for a long time. There's no point in dragging it out like this. Please divorce me, my husband begged, his forehead pressed against the floor in a pleading posture. I had been resisting for nearly a month. Maybe it was time to accept the inevitable and agree to the divorce. Fine, let's go through with the divorce. But I'm asking for alimony and my fair share of our assets. I understand. I'm prepared for that, I said. We discussed the alimony in detail, and I requested $50,000. It was more than usual, but considering I had invested a lot in our home during our 7 years of marriage, I felt it was fair compensation. James agreed to my terms. We also decided on asset division, with me receiving half of the balance in our joint account and him covering the cost of my relocation. Then, I signed the divorce papers that James had prepared. As I filled out the paperwork, my heart was filled with various emotions. Even though our love had faded, we had shared a life together under the same roof for 7 years, and it was all coming to an end with just a single piece of paper. Without any lingering feelings for James, I submitted the divorce papers to the city hall the next day, and our mutual divorce was finalized. Soon after, James wasted no time in marrying the other woman. Whether she rushed him or not, with a baby on the way, he probably wanted to be with her as soon as possible. I was honestly taken aback by how quickly he moved on, especially considering I hadn't even finished sorting through our shared belongings in the apartment. Feeling the need to hurry and pack up my things, I went to the apartment we used to share. As luck would have it, our timing overlapped, and James was also there when I arrived. Without exchanging many words, I immediately started tidying up the space. James, my ex-husband, finally spoke up. You're not shedding a tear, huh? It seemed James had expected me to resist and cry when he pleaded for a divorce on his knees. Honestly, I had always thought he was quite self-centered, and he wasn't the only one who had fallen out of love. Maybe because I had been refusing the divorce for so long, James might have assumed I still had feelings for him. It seemed like a misunderstanding on his part. But the reason I hadn't agreed to the divorce right away was because I was stubbornly determined to investigate his mistress on my own terms, rather than simply going along with James's wishes. Well, James, you're the one who's going to have a tougher time after the divorce, not me. Instead of crying, I could barely hold back laughter. Huh? What do you mean? My ex-husband James looked at me suspiciously. Considering you're a corporate hotshot and I'm just a housewife, you'll have more challenges. And since I'm planning to remarry, you'll be on your own. Well, in a normal situation that might be true. But it seems like Emma, the woman you're cheating with, is quite trashy. Wait, how do you know her name? You thought I was just being stubborn and refusing our divorce. I continued, watching James's face pale. I had hired a private investigator to look into her all this time. In just a few weeks, I had gathered a lot of information about his mistress. Firstly, her name is Emma. She's 27 years old, divorced twice, and currently living at her parents' home. Emma seems to have a questionable reputation, constantly involved with different men. She even lost custody of her child due to being a bad influence. Indeed, the investigator saw her entering a motel with other men. Just to be sure, I had asked for photos as evidence. When I shared all the information and showed him the pictures, James collapsed on the spot. No way. Emma can't be like that. She only had eyes for me, and we were planning to build a happy family. James seemed deeply in love with Emma. It was frustrating, but this woman indeed seemed to have a talent for charming men. What? You're lying. This is all made up to shake me up. This photo must be fake, James protested. It was exasperating to see him so foolishly blinded by love. Believe it or not, it's up to you. But even now, your mistress is involved with other men. Or should I say, your new wife? Maybe the child isn't even yours. James's face grew even paler. No way, not Emma. These were the findings from the private investigators, so the possibility of being deceived was high. Perhaps among her multiple boyfriends, James was the one who made the most money, which is why she chose him to marry. Quite an honor, isn't it? Even if the child may not be biologically yours, you wanted a child anyway, so raise your child well. I delivered this final blow to James and left the apartment with my belongings. After a while, I received an email from him. He wanted to get back together. As I suspected, the child Emma had given birth to wasn't James's. When he confronted Emma, she retorted, "I didn't know whose child it was until it was born." But since James was already married to Emma, legally he had to raise the child she gave birth to as his own. James had just been a money tree for her. As proof, when paying alimony to me, James had covered Emma's portion too. So, in total, he paid me $80,000. Furious, James confronted Emma, but she simply said, "You seemed happy to serve me." Eventually, she left the child behind and disappeared. James called me, begging, "You were right. I was deceived. I'm really sorry. I want to start over again." But I was just disgusted. You think I'm going to come back to you just because you're saying those things? You had an affair, that's a fact. You betrayed me, that's also a fact. You need to accept reality. I hung up the phone after that. Later, I heard from a mutual acquaintance that James handed over the child Emma left behind to her parents, telling them to take responsibility. Emma's parents responded, "That's troublesome. You raise the child." But James stubbornly refused, saying, "I have no obligation to raise a child that's not biologically mine." He submitted DNA test results to prove the child wasn't his and revoked his acknowledgement of the child. Emma's parents apparently didn't know the child wasn't James's. After they found Emma, they took her back home and are forcing her to raise the child in semi-captivity. They're keeping a close eye on her to prevent her from freely meeting other men. Meanwhile, even though my ex-husband James has cut all ties with Emma, he paid me $80,000 in alimony, including Emma's portion, which wiped out his savings. He's been demanding Emma repay the alimony he covered for her, but she doesn't seem to care and claims she can't pay back what she doesn't have. Sadly, James has become a divorced man with no savings, unable to focus on his work, and making many mistakes. Now he's been reassigned to a rural area with no chance of promotion, living a lonely life. On the other hand, I've moved back to my parents' house and am helping with their farming business. After a few years, I fell in love and married a local fisherman. We don't have children, but I'm happily spending every day with my husband, who is always kind to me. My name is Mia Yates. I'm 23 years old, and I work from home. I have a nice older brother who is 5 years older than me. He's engaged to a woman named Natalie, who is 26 years old. Natalie is very different from me. I'm not great at talking to people, but Natalie is outgoing and makes friends easily. Natalie has become close to our parents and often visits our house without telling us beforehand. Today, she showed up at our door without calling first. When the doorbell rang, my mom knew it was Natalie and welcomed her in. Natalie came into the living room with my mom and said, "I'm here." Then she looked surprised when she saw me. "Mia, you're still home?" she said without even saying hello. I told her, "I'm working from home." But she just said, "That's enough. You need to get a real job." I didn't know how to respond, so I went back to work without saying anything. My room is special to me. It's soundproof, and I designed it myself, with my parents' permission, of course. I pay for everything. It's like my own private castle, so I keep it locked and don't let anyone else inside. To get in, you have to unlock the soundproof door and then open another door. When I got inside, I let out my frustrations by yelling. I was annoyed that Natalie didn't understand that I was working. At lunchtime, a little light bulb in my room blinked, letting me know it was time to eat. I went to the living room where lunch was ready. My mom suggested we eat together, so I sat down. But then I saw Natalie sitting across from me, looking upset. "You're eating even though you don't have a job. Don't you care about upsetting your parents? You're like a parasite," Natalie said. I stayed quiet and just listened. When my parents said grace, I did too, and then started eating. Natalie didn't seem happy that my parents didn't scold me for not having a job. "Natalie, don't worry about it. Mia's our daughter, and we'll take care of her," my dad said, trying to reassure her. But Natalie wasn't convinced. She kept on expressing her worries. "I can't feel sure about marrying into this family if things stay like this," she said, still angry. My parents tried to calm her down, saying, "Just marry into our family, everything will be fine." But Natalie wasn't happy with their response. She kept on talking about her concerns. "I'm still not reassured. What if you two can't take care of Mia anymore? Do you expect me or our future kids to look after her?" she said, assuming that I'd always depend on others and never do anything for myself. I stopped eating and felt upset by what she was saying. My mom tried to defend me, saying, "Mia does work, you know. Don't worry about her," but Natalie wouldn't stop worrying. At 23, just look at her. Braided hair, thick glasses, always in sweats. "Who would believe she's working like this?" Natalie said, clearly frustrated. I tried to defend myself, softly saying, "How I look doesn't affect my work." But it seemed to make her even more upset. "Then what kind of job do you do? Tell me," she demanded, staring at me angrily. I was so scared that I couldn't speak. My mom stepped in, saying, "Mia's job is private to our family. I'm sorry, but we can't discuss it." Natalie got up and stormed off, saying, "So I'm not part of this family, is that it?" I felt bad for causing a scene and apologized to my parents. My dad reassured me, saying, "It's okay, Mia. Just do what makes you happy," with a smile. After dinner, I felt a bit better and decided to talk to Natalie about my job after my brother's wedding. I brought it up during the meal, and my parents seemed to think it was a good idea. Later in the evening, after cleaning up, I went grocery shopping with my mom while my dad took care of the garden. When we got back, we found Natalie crying in the living room with my dad comforting her. My mom asked what was wrong, but Natalie was too upset to answer. My dad told us he heard a loud noise from inside the house while he was in the garden. He pointed to a crowbar and hammer on the table. I realized right away that something had happened to my room and rushed to check it out. When I got to my room, I saw that the door was badly damaged, like someone had tried to force it open with a crowbar and hammer. I felt frozen, a mix of shock and fear taking over me. My dad called my brother, who promised to come over as soon as he could. So I decided to stay in my room until he got there and tried to calm myself down. While I was waiting, I called my company and got permission to tell my future sister-in-law about my job after she married my brother. When I saw the light flicker in my room, I knew my brother had arrived. When I stepped out, I was surprised to see him already at the door. He apologized for startling me and didn't look at me but at the damaged door. I could tell he was probably shocked by what Natalie had done. I told him not to worry, that I would replace it myself, but he insisted that Natalie would take care of it. He took my hand and led me to the living room, where Natalie and my parents were waiting. As soon as we walked in, my brother confronted Natalie, saying, "I never thought you were capable of such violence." Everyone was shocked to see my usually calm brother so angry. He insisted, "You need to apologize properly to Mia and fix the door." Natalie started crying and kept saying, "I'm sorry," to my brother, but he interrupted her, saying, "This apology isn't for me," and gave her a stern look. I told my brother it was okay, but he kept his eyes on Natalie. She turned to me, knelt down, and apologized, promising to make things right. I accepted her apology and decided to move on from the incident. But I was curious why she did it, so I asked her. She said, "I thought if you didn't have a safe place, you'd have to get a job." Hearing this, I debated whether to tell her about my job before the wedding. But I knew it went against company rules, so I stayed quiet for now. The tension between my brother and Natalie bothered me, so I gave them each a concert ticket to try to lighten the mood. As Natalie looked at the tickets, she exclaimed, "These are for the Ames concert." Her face lit up with excitement, and she turned to my brother, saying, "Let's go." Her joy was infectious. My brother asked me, "Are you sure? These tickets are hard to get." I replied, "I got lucky. You can use them to make peace if you want." My brother's face also lit up with delight. Seeing them so happy made me happy too. The good vibes returned, and everyone forgot about the damaged door, enjoying their meal together. On the day of the concert, while I was out, Natalie excitedly visited my house to thank me. Since I wasn't home at the time, Natalie seemed to tell my parents, "Enjoy yourselves. Looks like Mia's decided to work outside for a change." The concert was fantastic. Afterward, my brother called me. He'd split off from Natalie at a company party and was thrilled about the concert. He mentioned that Natalie was a huge Ames fan and had always wanted to attend their once-a-year concert. He said she was over the moon about finally seeing them live. On the way home, Natalie couldn't stop talking about how amazing Ames was. When I mentioned I was glad we patched things up, my brother surprised me by saying, "The soundproof door we got as compensation cost $7,000. I just replied, "Sounds about right." He was shocked, saying, "Wow, that's expensive." I explained to my brother that the components for a soundproof room are expensive, which surprised him even more. He mentioned that Natalie felt the $7,000 expense for the door, but the concert made up for it. I felt good about giving them the tickets, especially since my brother and Natalie seemed to be getting along. However, Natalie still didn't understand my work-from-home job and thought I started working outside after the concert, which made her happy. When she realized her mistake, she started calling and visiting my house daily, urging me to get a job. I hoped to endure it until the wedding. But things only got worse. Even though I didn't want to see her until then, Natalie kept summoning me to the living room, where she kept nagging me about getting a job before the wedding, saying, "I don't want a jobless family member." To distract Natalie, I gave her merchandise like mascots and file cases from my previous company. At first, she happily accepted her favorite Ames items, but eventually, she started asking questions. She wondered why I had so much Ames merchandise. Reluctantly, I told her, "A friend who works with the Ames company gives them to me." When Natalie heard this, her smile widened and she seemed even happier. "Please get me more tickets next time," she said, but there was still a problem. She wanted more merchandise and started causing trouble about being allowed into my room. I managed to stop her a few times, but I worried she might break the door again. So I gathered my courage and gave her a stern warning. "Natalie, if you break the door again, it won't just be the cost of repairs this time. Last time, I paid for it. Next time, you'll be the one paying." Natalie's face went pale at my words. I wondered if she was really considering doing it again. All I could do was hope the wedding would be over soon so I could have some peace. Even after that, until the wedding day, there wasn't a single day when Natalie didn't visit or use the call light. I lost count of how many times I yelled enough already in my room. I tried talking to my brother about it, but he seemed resigned, saying, "I've told Natalie over 100 times that Mia is working, but she doesn't seem to listen to me." In my mind, I thought, I wish my brother would get as angry as he did when she broke my door. But I knew he was busy with wedding preparations. He had mentioned he needed to finish a ton of work before the wedding so he could go on the honeymoon. So I didn't have much hope in relying on him. I had to give up and deal with Natalie on my own. Finally, it was the day before the wedding. As expected, our parents spent the day together, so the four of us had a fun night reminiscing and looking at old photo albums. It was nice to spend time together as a family after a long time. I mentioned, when I get married, my brother will have his own family, so we'll just be the three of us with our parents the day before the wedding. It'll feel a bit lonely. But my brother reassured me, saying, "No, I'll come here and spend the day with you." I was glad he said that. In that peaceful moment, his phone rang. It was Natalie calling. He answered and then handed me the phone, saying, "Natalie wants to talk to you." When I answered the phone, Natalie said, "Hey, something's going on with Ames. There's a big announcement tomorrow. Can you ask your friend who gives you the merchandise what it's about? What if she's quitting or taking a break?" Apparently, Ames' agency had announced on social media that there would be a major announcement the next day. I didn't want to be bothered during my family time, so I simply said, "I don't know," and hung up. My brother felt the same way and turned off his phone. When our dad said it was time to go to bed early, my brother bowed deeply and thanked our parents for taking care of him. He said he was ready to be happy with Natalie. Mom joked, "That's what happens when women get married." My brother laughed along with the rest of us, and we ended the night before the wedding on a light note. Finally, the wedding day arrived. I told my family I'd be a bit late in the morning, and they headed to the venue without me. When I got there later, I went to the waiting room to congratulate Natalie. I knocked on the door, and there she was, the beautiful bride, all ready for her big day. Just when I was going to congratulate the bride, she suddenly changed into a scary monster. She said she still had something important to tell me from yesterday when we talked on the phone. I said sorry and asked her what was wrong. She told me to leave. I tried to explain that it was my brother's wedding, but she was mad because I didn't have a job, and she didn't want people to think I was part of the family. I wanted to argue, but then Natalie, the bride, came really close to me and said firmly, "If I tell you to leave, you leave." Then she slammed the door shut. I felt really sad and went to a room they set up for me. There, professionals did my makeup and hair, and I changed into the nice dress I bought for the wedding. But I knew I wouldn't be able to go. While I was getting ready, my parents called. I told them what happened and promised I would still celebrate in my own way, even though I couldn't go to the ceremony. The wedding started without me, but I watched it on a screen in the room. I almost cried when I saw my brother looking for me, but I reminded myself it was a happy day, not a sad one, and watched the ceremony, sending my blessings silently. After all the fun, the lady hosting the event said, "We got a special video for the stars of today's show. Watch the screen, please." The lights dimmed and a video started playing. Everyone in the room cheered when they saw Ames, who Natalie adored, appear on the screen with a message. "Surprise, it's me, Ames. Congratulations on getting married, bro and Natalie." Natalie looked shocked and glanced at my brother, who seemed to be saying, "That's Mia. I've been looking forward to this day, but I couldn't make it because of some urgent stuff." I made up an excuse for not being there and shared a simple message of congratulations. Then, I admitted, "Natalie, I never told you, but I'm now part of your family. But I'm moving overseas soon, so we probably won't see each other much. You can ignore me if you want." Oh, and I wasn't just lazing around. I was working in my home studio. I couldn't help but add a little sarcasm. But I ended by saying, "I really wish you both all the happiness. I'm a singer-songwriter named Ames, and I got popular on social media. My stage name, Ames, is just my real name, Maya, spelled backward." When the lights turned on again, everyone was staring at Natalie. She looked shocked and really surprised. My part was done, so I left the place with the hair and makeup people and other workers. Later, my brother called me. He said after we left, Natalie was supposed to thank the guests and say goodbye, but instead, she was running around looking for me. When she found out I had left, she started crying in front of everyone. I also heard from friends that now everyone knows Natalie as the bride who Ames doesn't even consider family. My speech from the wedding got super famous on social media. They say she's feeling really sorry about what she did and can't even go out in her neighborhood anymore. My husband has been cheating on me. He's been showering his mistress with designer goods, and what's worse, he's been using my credit card to pay for these extravagant purchases. For the sake of our son, I've endured his behavior up until now, but I've reached my breaking point. I can no longer tolerate this. I have to take action, and the person who came to my rescue was the last one I expected. My name is Flora, and I'm 35 years old. I've been married to Adam for 10 years, and our beloved son Dominic turned 8 this year. I'm living my dream as a novelist, a career I've always aspired to pursue. My mystery series has a strong following, allowing me to secure several monthly serials, and my standalone books are also doing well, keeping me busy every day. At the start of our marriage, my husband had a job, but he stopped working as soon as I began earning. For the last 2 or 3 years, he's mostly lounged around the house, occasionally going out to play pachinko. However, today he changed into a suit, which was out of character for him. Something seemed off. Why the suit? I boldly asked him. Adam, it's unusual to see you in a suit. Where are you going? I questioned. My husband seemed startled but quickly composed himself. I'm going to a job interview, he responded. For what position? I asked. Well, it's for a job, obviously. I thought it was time for me to start working again, he replied. Good luck, I said, trying to sound supportive. He left the house, and I genuinely believed he was attending a job interview. I thought maybe he was reconsidering his priorities now that our son is still young and our future needed to be secured. However, he didn't return home until 1 a.m. I was up late working on a deadline, and when he finally stumbled in, he reeked of alcohol and perfume. He passed out on the living room sofa with his smartphone still in his hand. It was unlocked, and out of sheer curiosity, I decided to take a look. What I saw on his phone shocked me. To cut to the chase, my husband was cheating on me, and his affair was with my best friend, Delphine. They had gone to a fancy restaurant with a stunning night view that very day. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. It was too much to bear. How could Adam cheat on me with Delphine? Didn't Delphine have her own husband? I trusted them both. The unexpected reality brought tears to my eyes. I knew I shouldn't wake my husband, so I held back my sobs. Evidence, I needed evidence. For now, I sent the proof of the affair to my own phone and decided to think about what to do next. The next morning, I casually asked my husband, who seemed to be behaving as usual, "Hey Adam, about yesterday." "Yesterday?" he responded, seemingly puzzled. You mentioned you had an interview, but you got home pretty late. I was just curious about what happened." My husband looked away, clearly trying to come up with an excuse. "Actually, I ran into a friend after the interview and we went out for drinks." "A friend? Who?" I pressed. "Just some guy, Flora. Do I need to explain everything?" He replied defensively. "You're right," I conceded, knowing he was hiding the fact that he had met with Delphine. His evasiveness only confirmed his infidelity. 1 month after discovering my husband's affair, I was still grappling with the situation. I hadn't confronted him about the cheating yet, knowing it would create a rift in our relationship. If I were on my own, I would have shown him the evidence of his affair and immediately sought a divorce. However, I couldn't bear to separate him from our son, Dominic, who was only 8 years old. Despite his frequent outings, taking advantage of my focus on work, this gave me the perfect opportunity to collect evidence of his infidelity. While he was out, I searched his room and found several unfamiliar receipts. It seemed he had been purchasing women's designer items, but there was no sign of them in his room, and he certainly hadn't given me any. There was only one conclusion. Adam had been showering Delphine with luxury goods, but where was he getting the money for that? He's unemployed and living off my allowance. I give him a monthly allowance, but he likely doesn't have any savings left. Worried, I decided to follow him. During this time, I called my brother over to watch Dominic, without telling him about my husband's affair. I fibbed to my brother, saying, "Hey, sorry to bother you out of the blue." "It's no problem, but what's up? Why do you suddenly need me to watch Dominic?" "I just want to go shopping alone," I lied. "Shopping? You've never been one to shop in person. Don't you usually shop online?" "Normally, yes, but today I want to buy something that's only available in store. Can you watch Dominic for me?" "All right, but don't be gone too long. Dominic gets lonely," he agreed. "Thank you," I said, relieved. With my brother's help, I was able to set my plan in motion. I watched my husband walking arm in arm with my best friend Delphine. I knew what was happening, but seeing it with my own eyes was a painful shock. They were cheerfully entering a high-end designer store. Then I witnessed something outrageous. "Is that my credit card?" My husband was using my secondary credit card to pay the bill. I always kept my main card safely in my wallet, while the secondary card was left unattended in a drawer. My husband took the secondary card without my knowledge and used it to fund gifts for his mistress. Over the past few months, I've been making large purchases for work, such as monitors, keyboards, and even new furniture, causing the balance on the credit card to skyrocket. Both cards were linked to the same bank account, and with my busy schedule, I hadn't reviewed the details closely. This negligence came back to haunt me. Not only was he cheating on me, but he was also using my money freely. Any lingering affection I had for my husband had completely evaporated. Although I was partly to blame for not noticing sooner, I couldn't bring myself to forgive him. I took clear photos of the two of them together and went home, simmering with anger. For the next few days, I focused on plotting my revenge. I repeatedly checked his usual computer when he wasn't around, knowing he sensed his phone and computer, allowing me easy access to his communications with Delphine. Soon, I discovered that the two of them were planning a trip to Okinawa during the upcoming long weekend, a 4-day, 3-night getaway. This was my chance. I planned to execute my revenge during my husband's affair trip, but one obstacle remained: my son. Carrying out my plan without my son discovering his father's infidelity would be challenging. I decided to turn to my brother for help once more. "Hey bro, sorry to bother you again, but could you watch Dominic for me during the upcoming long weekend?" "You mean for all 4 days?" he asked, sounding taken aback. "I have something important to take care of." His question made me uneasy. Before I could respond, he spoke firmly. "Flora, stop trying to handle everything alone. Adam's cheating on you, isn't he?" I was taken aback. "How did you know?" "I heard it from Dominic," he said. "Dominic?" I repeated in surprise. Even though my son was young, he had picked up on his father's infidelity. I don't know if he fully understood what was happening, but he sensed his father growing close to someone other than me, and it was causing me pain. Dominic, in his innocent way, had observed the situation. "I thought I was shielding Dominic from this," I murmured. "It seems Adam's actions have affected you so deeply that even Dominic could sense it. Are you still considering staying with someone like that?" "But if I divorce Adam, Dominic will be upset," I started to say. But then Dominic, who had been in the next room, suddenly appeared. "Mom, it's okay. I'm on your side." "Dominic, are you sure?" I asked, moved by his words. "I don't need someone who makes Mom sad." "As long as I have you, I'm okay," he said resolutely. "Thank you, Dominic, and thank you too, bro," I said, grateful for their support. With the help of my son and brother, I made up my mind to take action against my husband without any hesitation. We began moving to a new home on the day my husband was set to leave for his trip with his mistress. My brother helped us, and we discreetly packed our belongings whenever my husband was away. The night before the long weekend, I decided to confront my husband and give him one last chance. He was visibly excited about his trip the next day, and I went straight to the point. "Adam, what's with the suitcase? Why are you packing?" He replied, "Oh, this. I'm going on a trip with a friend starting tomorrow." "A trip? Did you mention anything about that?" "It's a last-minute decision, isn't it? You're using the allowance I give you," I questioned. My husband seemed annoyed and tried to brush off my questions. "Don't talk to me about it anymore, Aura." I couldn't care less about his excuses. I lowered my voice as I asked, "Are you really going on this trip with a friend?" My husband flinched at my tone, his shoulders tensing, but he still attempted to lie. "Of course. You've been nagging me a lot." "I see. A trip with a friend. Have a good time," I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. I could be fun regardless of whether he told me to be. "Just don't overdo it," I said as I left my husband's room. To be honest, if he had come clean with me then, I was considering settling matters amicably, requesting alimony and child support, despite his infidelity. After all, there was a time when I loved him. When my novels weren't selling well, he supported me and kept me going. I didn't want to harbor hatred or resentment toward him. However, after everything he's done, I can't afford to remain calm. For the sake of my son and my future, I need to end my relationship with him. There's no point in holding back any longer for a man who continually lies. The following morning, my husband had already left for his trip. I opened the drawer and confirmed that he had taken my credit card as usual. I immediately contacted the credit card company, reported the card as lost, and requested an immediate block on its use. My son woke up, and I greeted him, "Good morning." He responded with a beaming smile. "Mom, today's the day, right?" "Huh." I asked. We're moving to our new home today, right? He said, his eyes sparkling with excitement. Seeing his enthusiasm erase any lingering anxiety. That's right, Monique. I've canceled the credit card, and now it's time to move. Yeah, I'm excited for our new home, he said. Thanks to my brother's help, the move went smoothly. My son and I settled into our new home, while my husband's belongings were sent to a designated location. The next day, we were all relaxing at the new house with my son and brother. I got a call from my husband. Hello? Flora, is that you? Could you transfer me some money? I've spent more than I planned, and now I need some extra cash. He likely couldn't use the card since I had frozen it, so he was asking me for money without directly mentioning the card. His request disgusted me. Didn't you say you were going to stick to your allowance? I asked. Come on, don't say that. I can't enjoy my trip alone if you do that, he whined. Alone? Don't you mean with Delphin? I shot back. My husband seemed taken aback. What are you talking about? Who's Delphin? What's going on with the card? It's pointless to play dumb. You're all over the place. Your lies aren't working, I snapped. It's clear you've been cheating on me with my best friend Delphin. Did you really think you wouldn't get caught? This is what it looks like. It's not cheating. He tried to justify himself. My anger flared at his attempts to make excuses, oblivious to the presence of my brother and son. I didn't hold back, letting my fury loose on him. I had been holding in my anger for too long. Stop making excuses. You have a family, yet you chose to have an affair with another woman and misuse someone else's credit card. Do you realize how low you've sunk? Flora, let's calm down, my husband tried to say. Calm down. How can I stay calm when I'm talking to the person I despise most in the world? Let me make this clear. I have no intention of forgiving you or offering any help. You and the woman you cheated with can go straight to hell. Don't you dare show your face in front of me or Dominic ever again. I hung up the phone abruptly, cutting him off. Shortly after, Delphine, the woman he cheated with, called me. Flora, what are you doing? She demanded. Delphine, long time no see. How's your trip with your best friend's husband going? I retorted. Shut up. Explain yourself. What are you talking about? Don't play dumb. You sent Adam's belongings to my house, didn't you? Yes, during our move, I had shipped my husband's things to Delphine's house, knowing she was the one he had the affair with. Since Delphine was married, her husband was naturally at home. I had done it on purpose, sending all of Adam's belongings to her husband along with a detailed letter explaining the situation. As I shouted at Delphine over the phone, nearly breaking the speaker, I expressed my anger. Are you serious? My husband found out, and Isn't that expected? You're having an affair even though you're married. My supposed best friend did such a disgraceful thing. You're the worst. I'm incredibly disappointed in you. Excuse me? She responded, taken aback. I think that's my line, I retorted. You were the one having an affair with my husband. Do you think I'd forgive you for that? Who showed disrespect first? Flora, I wasn't serious. It was just a fling. There's no way I'd settle for a jobless loser like him. Whether you were serious or not doesn't matter to me. I'm divorcing him soon. Your affair is a fact, and I won't forgive you. I'll be demanding the maximum compensation from you, so be ready. Compensation. What? I didn't agree to that. Why should I pay compensation? It's natural. You did something that warrants it. Wait, I'm a housewife. I can't afford to pay compensation. I don't care. That's for you to figure out. Maybe you can beg your husband for help, though that doesn't seem likely. Wait a minute, Flora, please, she started to plead. But I cut her off. Goodbye. I hung up on her and blocked her contact. I finalized my divorce through a lawyer and demanded compensation from both my ex-husband and Delphine. I claimed child support and the money he had spent on the credit card without my consent. Delphine, saddled with debt from the compensation payments, was served divorce papers by her husband and reportedly kicked out of their home. She tried relying on her family but was turned away. As a result, she's now working night shifts and struggling to make ends meet. My ex-husband attempted to lean on Delphine, but she blamed him for causing her divorce. The relationship quickly disintegrated, and they went their separate ways. As for my ex-husband, he's now juggling several part-time jobs just to get by day to day. Having been unemployed for so long, finding a stable job won't be easy. If he ever falls behind on compensation or child support payments, I won't hesitate to take action to collect what's owed. Meanwhile, my son and I are thriving in our new home. He's growing up fast, and each day is full of new experiences. I aim to continue showering him with love and shield him from any sadness. I'm Emily, a 35-year-old full-time homemaker. Just a few days ago, I welcomed into the world my twin siblings, John and Sarah. It was a 2-day journey from the first contractions to their arrival, and by the time they were in my arms, my exhaustion was replaced with overwhelming joy at their healthy cries. Originally, the plan was for us to head home with the babies, but a month prior to their birth, my mother underwent surgery and was still recovering. My parents were eagerly anticipating our return, with my mom insisting that despite her recovery, she wanted us to come home with the babies. However, we decided it was best to prioritize her health and support her from a distance, working together with my husband to navigate this new chapter. But instead of the anticipated joy of caring for our newborns, an unexpected challenge emerged. What follows is the story of the intense harassment I faced during that time. On the third morning after bringing my newborn twins home, the apartment's intercom blared unexpectedly. I wondered who could be visiting so early. Peering through the peephole, I saw my mother-in-law standing outside. I was surprised and puzzled by her sudden arrival, but I quickly unlocked the door, and she pushed it open with force. Her abrupt entry startled the babies awake. John was the first to stir, and then Sarah followed, both crying out in response to the commotion. Having already dealt with a restless night of soothing them, I was dismayed to see their brief peace disturbed. My mother-in-law had come over by taxi, and I felt unable to send her away. Instead, I made my way to the kitchen to prepare some tea and snacks for her. "Oh my, what a disaster," my mother-in-law exclaimed as she took in the apartment. "I can't believe my son is living in these conditions. Emily, you haven't been neglecting your chores just because you had a baby, have you?" She went around checking for dust, dragging her finger along the windowsills like an overly critical character in a TV drama. "I'm sorry, but they cried so much last night that I barely got any sleep. I'll tidy up once they settle down," I responded, trying to soothe the crying twins. My mother-in-law brushed my hand aside, scooped up the babies, and said, "I'll handle the twins." Sleepless nights are no excuse. If you want to be a good wife, get started on your housework right away. Despite my exhaustion, she insisted I begin the housework immediately. I tried explaining the situation, but my mother-in-law was solely focused on the twins and disregarded my fatigue. Reluctantly, I prepared some formula to hand to her, but she immediately chastised me. "Formula? Any mother would breastfeed. What kind of uncaring parent are you?" Her words struck a nerve, hitting on my deepest insecurity. Although I nearly burst into tears, I composed myself and followed her instructions, starting to clean the room. Though she claimed she would take care of the twins, her efforts were minimal. When their diapers needed changing, she seemed to avoid it and instead called me over for my chores to handle it. My progress with the housework was minimal, leaving me puzzled about her true intentions in visiting. Moreover, for the next 2 months, she made near-daily appearances, offering half-hearted care for the babies while continuing to criticize me. This period became nothing short of a struggle as she constantly complained about me. I longed to discuss things with my husband, but he was always exhausted from his demanding job, leaving me with no chance to connect. Enduring 2 months of snide remarks from my mother-in-law felt like an eternity, so when she announced she wouldn't be visiting anymore, I thought relief was finally in sight. However, her next demand caught me off guard. She extended her hand, expecting payment for 2 months' worth of transportation and childcare assistance. I couldn't believe it. Was she serious? I couldn't hold back my frustration. "What do you mean? I never asked for your help. Your presence here has been anything but helpful. Please, don't come back." With those words, I swiftly escorted her out and packed her belongings. Without hesitation, I took my twins to my childhood home. Guilt gnawed at me for burdening my own mother, but I knew I couldn't find peace if I remained in that environment. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law wasted no time in airing her grievances to my father-in-law and husband. She portrayed herself as the victim, claiming I had spoken to her harshly despite her efforts to help. When my husband returned home to find us gone, he was shocked. After hearing my side of the story, his face drained of color, and he stormed off to confront his parents. The following day, my father-in-law, who had only heard one side of the story from my mother-in-law, was visibly shaken when my husband recounted the events. "Oh dear, what have you done?" he asked, his usually calm demeanor replaced with a mask of fury directed at my mother-in-law. It was a rare display of anger from him, one that even my husband had never witnessed before. My husband was speechless, and my mother-in-law appeared flustered. "Why are you so angry? Isn't she the one at fault here?" I made an effort to lighten her childcare load, even covering travel expenses. "Why am I the one being scolded?" she argued. She maintained that she had acted with my well-being in mind and adamantly denied any wrongdoing. "You don't get it at all. Do you even know who your grandfather is?" My father-in-law interjected, his voice trembling with rage. He fixed his gaze on my mother-in-law, his eyes wide with intensity. "Who? You mean that stern-looking elder from the wedding? I remember you being quite deferential to him, but what's the significance?" she scoffed. "Are you seriously intimidated by him?" "No, he's the chairman of my company," my father-in-law clarified. My mother-in-law's response was an inadvertent "what?" It turns out, my grandfather holds a significant position as the chairman of a major corporation. Our wedding had been quite the grand affair, with several CEOs of renowned companies in attendance. While my grandfather is known for his strict demeanor and reserved nature, especially in professional settings, he has always showered me with affection. Whenever we met, he would spoil me with lavish gifts or treat me to extravagant meals. Upon my marriage, I later learned from Grandma that my grandfather had been so overjoyed he shed tears, surprising everyone. Given how much Grandpa cares for me, he would never stay silent if he learned what my mother-in-law had done. Normally, just the thought of his reaction would be enough to make someone nervous, but my father-in-law had another reason to keep this from him. I was on the brink of a major career advancement to a managerial position. This promotion would come with a substantial salary increase, and I needed to focus on doing my best. But instead of considering my situation, he went and created this mess. What were you thinking? At the moment, my father-in-law seemed more concerned with his promotion than with me or my situation. My husband, aware of his father's priorities, was visibly disappointed that his own father appeared to care more about his career than about the twins and me. He said, "I've had enough. I'm deeply disappointed in my dad's self-centeredness and shocked at my mom for mistreating my wife. Please keep out of our lives." Upon hearing her son's rejection, my mother-in-law lunged at him with surprising intensity. "Don't be ridiculous. You're the family's heir. I won't let you walk away from your responsibilities here. I'm going to go talk to Emily and set her straight. She is our daughter-in-law, and she needs to manage the household properly." Upon hearing this, my father-in-law turned to his wife and said, "You aren't seriously thinking about barging into Emily's parents' house, are you? Don't be reckless. It will jeopardize my chances of a promotion. Stay out of it." Hearing his father's words, my husband quietly left his family home. He walked to my parents' house, recounted the events, and apologized for his family's behavior. His expression was one of sadness rather than anger. "I can't believe my parents would behave this way. I'm so sorry." In response to my husband's apology, my parents remained silent. Instead, they simply invited him to join us for dinner since he was there. "Why don't you stay the night, James? Our house is close to your apartment, so you can easily bring a change of clothes." Initially, my husband hesitated at my parents' generosity, but he longed for some quality time with the twins and decided to stay. It had been a while since we could unwind as a family. Watching my husband cuddle our crying twins was a heartwarming sight. When it was time to sleep, my husband and I lay with the twins nestled between us. I wished these peaceful moments could last forever, but I knew my mother-in-law wouldn't remain quiet for long. Deep down, I feared her unexpected arrival, though none of us anticipated just how soon she would reappear. The following day, while my parents were at work, the doorbell at their house rang persistently. I had a sinking feeling about it. Checking the intercom, I was alarmed to see my mother-in-law standing outside, unannounced. "Open up. I know you're in there. Give me back my grandchildren." She continued to bang on the door, repeating her demands. My mother-in-law kept pressing the intercom and pounding on the door, causing the twins to cry so much I felt like I was on the verge of losing it. Then, someone else opened the front door. "Finally, you opened the door. Now, hand over the twins. Wait, who are you?" To her surprise, it wasn't me who answered the door but my grandfather. "How dare you bang on someone's door like that?" That's incredibly rude. Whether or not my grandfather was actually upset, he spoke to my mother-in-law with a stern and commanding tone. My mother-in-law looked utterly taken aback, unable to respond to his authoritative presence. Hold on a second. Are you the chairman my husband has talked about? My mother-in-law's voice trembled as she asked my grandfather. Ah, now I recall. Are you James' mother-in-law? I didn't recognize you since you didn't introduce yourself at the wedding. My mother-in-law had been completely opposed to our marriage. She felt as though she was losing her son, whom she had raised with care, and refused to attend the wedding initially. Though those around her convinced her to go, she didn't greet my relatives and instead spent her time in the waiting room with a sullen expression. It's understandable that my grandfather didn't recognize her. Once he realized she was my mother-in-law, his expression grew more formidable as he glared at her while she trembled. I had previously confided in my grandfather about everything I had endured. He likely anticipated my mother-in-law showing up uninvited, which explained why he had been staying with us for a while. In truth, he wanted to spend time with his great-grandchildren, but he hadn't anticipated her arriving so soon. I didn't mean to bother you, Emily. I just wanted to see the twins since you brought them here without telling me. Isn't it unfair not to let me know? She insisted that her visit was simply to see the twins, not to trouble me. Still, given her earlier aggressive actions, banging on the door and pressing the intercom while shouting for her grandchildren, it was hard to believe her claims. Is that so? But didn't you demand that your granddaughter return my grandchildren earlier? Since when did they become your possessions? My mother-in-law couldn't let those words slide and argued back. What are you saying? Those children are part of our family, especially John, who is the heir. They are rightfully our grandchildren, not yours. Indeed, her affection for the twins stemmed from their status as heirs. While she loved Sarah as well, John, as the heir, held a special place in her heart. I understand your fondness for the twins, but is it fair to disregard their mother, who was exhausted after giving birth? Forcing your way into her home is quite uncalled for, isn't it? My mother-in-law was caught off guard by those words and visibly paled once again. Wait, you're not going to tell my husband about this, are you? He specifically told me not to come here. I can't let him find out. Despite my father-in-law's strong advice against coming here, my mother-in-law chose to ignore him and came anyway. If her husband discovered her actions, divorce could be on the table. Although she pleaded with my grandfather to keep her visit a secret, there was no way he would agree. He replied to the anxious mother-in-law, "What are you saying? There's no reason to hide the truth, especially if there's guilt involved. I'll inform your husband of your visit. In the future, make sure to schedule an appointment before you come." With those words, my grandfather closed the front door. Typically, my mother-in-law would have continued knocking and pressing the intercom. But with my grandfather, the chairman present, she seemed to take a quieter exit this time. Though she kept silent about her unannounced visit to my family's home, my grandfather later called her husband to his office to explain the situation. Despite being explicitly instructed not to go to our home, my father-in-law was clearly furious that his wife had defied him and done it anyway. I deeply apologize for my wife's thoughtless actions. I assure you, I'll ensure she never repeats such behavior. He sincerely apologized to my grandfather. My father-in-law's apology was earnest, but my grandfather wasn't oblivious to his underlying intentions. Indeed, your wife's actions were unacceptable, but don't you bear some responsibility as well? It appears you prioritize short-term matters and overlook those around you. There's considerable discontent about your leadership in the workplace. Promoting someone with such shortcomings is out of the question. In the end, my father-in-law's promotion was rescinded. Blaming his wife for the missed opportunity, he went home, delivered a harsh lecture, and slammed finalized divorce papers onto the table before packing his bags and leaving. Until then, my mother-in-law had relied solely on my father-in-law's income, so his departure meant she faced an uncertain financial future. She attempted to persuade him to stay, but it was too late. The damage was done, and their relationship was beyond repair. All of this transpired because of that woman. She should never have married my dear James. I can't forgive her. I'll never forgive her. Having lost everything, my mother-in-law flew into a rage and stormed over to my parents' home. She pounded on the door and screamed at the top of her lungs, "I've lost everything because of you. If only you weren't here. Give me back my grandchildren. Give me back James." It was well past 9 p.m. when she began banging on the door and shouting. This kind of behavior at that hour was completely unreasonable, and my husband finally decided to call the police. My mother-in-law was escorted away to the police station in a squad car. Despite everything, my husband apologized profusely to my parents and grandfather for the disturbance, though they all knew he wasn't to blame. The sense of relief that washed over me as peace finally returned to our home was uplifting. Hopefully, this marks the end of any further disruptions, and we can now enjoy a quiet, peaceful life. While it was unfortunate that things had reached this point, I felt a sense of relief knowing we could now concentrate on raising our children without any more disruptions. Following the incident, my in-laws finalized their divorce, and my mother-in-law moved back in with her parents. Her parents' home was situated in a secluded rural area, much like Nebraska, with only a handful of buses running daily. Without a driver's license, it would be challenging for my mother-in-law to visit us. My mother-in-law, who had once been so determined to have the grandchildren to herself, struggled to adjust to life without seeing them. She repeatedly pleaded with my husband for the chance to see the children and reconcile with me, but he couldn't forgive her self-centered behavior and blocked her calls. Cut off from both her son and her grandchildren, my mother-in-law became distant and disheartened. It seems her own parents did not offer her much sympathy. Having lost everything, my mother-in-law secluded herself in her room, shedding tears of regret daily. If you don't want a divorce, get out of this house right now, all right? These words came suddenly from my husband. Obviously, I was taken aback. He must have been quite confident that I wouldn't file for divorce to go to such lengths to intimidate me. When I couldn't take it anymore, I decided to seek advice from someone else. My name is Anna. I'm a 30-year-old office worker. My husband James and I are about to celebrate our 5th wedding anniversary. We're still waiting for the blessing of a child, which has led to a constant barrage of questions from my mother-in-law about when she can expect grandchildren. My father-in-law passed away years ago. My mother-in-law lives on the inheritance he left behind. Honestly, I feel on the verge of a nervous breakdown with her constant prodding about grandchildren. Actually, I might already be there. Despite seeing me like this, my husband James doesn't lift a finger to help. In fact, he recently started siding with his mother, blaming me for our troubles. I used to adore him for his kindness when we were dating. But after we got married, his attitude completely changed. Without any consultation, he decided we would live near his childhood home. When James is off from work, I am summoned to his parents' house and made to do housework all day long. Of course, there are no breaks. While I'm busy with chores at his parents' house, the two of them either go out together or stay in watching TV and laughing. I was even yelled at once for making too much noise with the vacuum cleaner. After that, I was forbidden to use it and was told to clean with a broom and a rag instead. Then, my sister-in-law moved back home. She was originally living in a neighboring town, but due to some personality conflict, she had recently moved back. Her return has only added to my burden. She has a 4-year-old daughter and expects me to make her kindergartner's lunch every day. When I tell her that it's impossible because of my job, I get yelled at by my mother-in-law, saying, "Your sister-in-law is dealing with the aftermath of a divorce." My husband says, "Don't you want to be useful to the family?" And my sister-in-law herself says, "It'll be good practice for when you have a child of your own, so you should be thankful." So I end up waking up at 4 a.m. every morning, making my niece's lunchbox and breakfast for my in-laws, then head back to my place, finish my own housework, and go to work. That's the brutal routine I've been forced into. My husband, of course, doesn't lift a finger to help with any household chores. The only time I get to rest is during my break time at work. One day, after living this exhausting routine for a while, my husband dropped a bombshell on me. "Oh, by the way, Anna, you should quit your job. I've talked it over with my mom and sister. You know she's going through a rough time. You understand, right?" "No, I don't get what you're saying." "Listen, I mean quit your job and take care of the house," he snapped at me before storming off to take a bath. I couldn't see the connection between my sister-in-law's divorce and me quitting my job. My husband is stuck in a dead-end job, and there are months. When I earn more than him, does he really think he'd live off his salary alone? Neither my mother-in-law nor my sister-in-law work. I can't understand why they can't handle the housework. Feeling like I couldn't handle any more of this, I grabbed my car keys and drove off to one place that came to mind. That place was my childhood home, a bit far from the apartment we live in now. My parents had moved overseas, and no one currently lived there. Because my parents are the worrying type, I couldn't bring myself to talk to them about the matter. Whenever something unpleasant happened, I'd come here. This is my home, filled with precious memories. As I was lost in these thoughts, my phone rang. It was my husband. Hey, I just got to the bath and you're gone. Are you back at your parents' place again? Yes, so what? Could you stop running back home every time something goes wrong? His words simply didn't resonate. I'll be working from here for a while, and no, I won't go to your parents' house either. Defeated by his forcefulness, I returned to our house. Afterwards, I quit my beloved job in the fashion industry. My clueless coworkers speculated I might be pregnant. I was given no free time, made to manage the household all day. Even when I caught a cold and ran a high fever, no one seemed to care. I had become a servant in this house, a slave to put it bluntly. However, one day amidst this lifestyle, something happened. Guess what? My sister-in-law was getting remarried. Moreover, her fiancé was an executive at a major corporation, earning a substantial income. It was quite a shock. My sister-in-law isn't exactly a beauty, and her personality leaves a lot to be desired. I understood everyone has different tastes and there are all sorts of people out there. The entire in-law family was celebrating, shouting about how she was marrying into money. My sister-in-law, full of pride, showed me a photo of the man. Huh, this man, I thought, looking at the photo. When my husband said something unbelievable. Because of this, Anna, your parents' house will become my sister's family place. I was stunned. Wait a minute, that house is what my parents left for me. It's not for you to decide. The whole family has decided. You, who lives off my money, don't have a say in this, he retorted. Was the person standing in front of me a devil in human skin? That house was left for me by my father, a place for me to live if I ever had children. James should know this. Why can he act so selfishly? My heart was at its limit. As if to add insult to injury, my mother-in-law said, "You can't even give us a grandchild. Can't you be useful around the house for once?" There was no one on my side in this house. I returned home, packed a few belongings, and headed to my parents' house. I made a firm decision in my heart. I would never go back. A few days later, having received no calls from my husband, I thought he might have reconsidered. Then, suddenly, the doorbell rang. Standing there were my husband and sister-in-law. "What are you doing here?" I asked. "We thought we should take a look around," my sister-in-law said, barging in. Despite my pleas for them to stop, they ignored me, snooping around the house, treating me as if I was invisible. "This house is pretty nice too. Good for you, Anna," my sister-in-law remarked. "And when do you plan to move out of this house, Anna? My sister's wedding is coming up soon." "Get it together," my husband said, unchanged as I stayed silent. My husband added, "If you don't want to get divorced, leave now." Confident that I wouldn't divorce him, my husband was grinning with my sister-in-law looking my way. "Got it," I said. Once I confirmed, my husband seemed pleased, saying it's all he wanted to hear. Apparently, under the guise of celebrating my sister-in-law's wedding, they are planning a long family-only trip starting tomorrow. Naturally, I'm not included in this little escapade. My husband told me to pack up and leave by the time they get back. Then, he and my sister-in-law left with an excited air about them, watching their backs. 2 weeks later, the day for my in-laws to return from their trip arrived, and my phone began ringing incessantly. The caller was my husband, with calls also from my mother-in-law and sister-in-law mixed in. Unable to ignore the constant noise any longer, I finally answered the call. "Hey Anna, where the hell are you?" my husband demanded. "I'm at home," I replied. "You're lying. You're not at the apartment or at your parents' place. And what's the meaning of this? Your family house has a for sale sign." "Yes, I put it up for sale." "What are you talking about?" he asked, clearly caught off guard. "Well, after your mockery, I gave it some thought. The house you're living in now just seems so dirty to me. I prefer cleanliness. After all, I'm divorcing you." "Don't mess with me," my husband yelled. That was going to be my line. "Let's let our lawyers handle it from here." With that, I hung up on him while he was still shouting. On the day my husband and sister-in-law returned, I had already been in touch with a certain person, a friend of my father's who runs a real estate company. Though I had no prior experience selling houses, he offered me guidance and we managed to strike a good deal. As a side note, the apartment we had been living in was in my name since my husband couldn't pass the screening process. I had no intention of staying there, so I canceled the lease while they were away and sent all of my husband's belongings to his parents' house, cash on delivery. Even after that, I continued to receive calls from my in-laws, which I completely ignored. I recorded all the unpleasant messages they left on my voicemail. According to my lawyer, my husband was hesitant, even though he initially wanted a divorce. It seemed he was reluctant to lose his maid. I anticipated a lengthy battle, but then my husband suddenly agreed to divorce. My lawyer told me that my husband, mother-in-law, and sister-in-law abruptly showed up at his office, insisting that he divorce me and process it quickly. My husband had been wavering on the divorce, but my mother-in-law convinced him that since my sister-in-law's new husband was wealthy, they could afford to hire a new housekeeper and get rid of me, the barren wife, and find a younger, newer spouse. With that, my husband agreed to the divorce. Moreover, they offered to pay a small settlement on the condition that I would not get involved with them any longer. I thought that was supposed to be my line, but I decided to accept what was offered. Not long after, my sister-in-law got remarried. For a while after that, life was quiet. Taking care of myself was so much easier than I thought. I deeply regretted not divorcing sooner. Well, I'm finally free, time to enjoy my new life. Just as I was beginning to embrace this thought, an incident happened out of nowhere. My in-laws showed up at my new home. The moment I opened the door, they barged in, and my ex-husband demanded, "We need to talk. Sit down." Despite wondering who they thought they were, I took a seat. Then he said, "Come back home. We forgive you." Unable to close my gaping mouth, I answered, "Excuse me." I wanted them to leave immediately, so I teased, "Oh, are you talking about your sister's husband? Has he disappeared?" The three of them widened their eyes as if to say, "Why do you know about that?" and stared at me. "What do you know?" "Something. After we registered our marriage, he suddenly disappeared. We can't contact him," my mother-in-law added, with a hint of excitement. "On top of that, he ran off with her family's fortune." "Was this your doing? You've brought us such terrible fortune, daughter-in-law." She looked as if she would attack me at any moment. Tired of their baseless accusations, I decided it was time to set the record straight. I decided to reveal a truth to them. "Wow, I didn't realize your sister liked hamburgers so much." "What are you talking about? Hamburgers all of a sudden?" "Don't you know your sister's husband isn't some executive at a major company? He's just a part-timer at a hamburger shop." The sister-in-law froze, rendered speechless. I continued my story. In my single days, my friend and I loved visiting different hamburger shops. There was one favorite shop where a certain employee always made mistakes and got yelled at by the manager. That man happened to be your sister-in-law's husband. Once I started dating my husband, he told me no more hamburgers, so I gave up my hobby. When your sister-in-law proudly showed me her husband's photo, I recognized him but decided it wasn't my place to interfere and stayed silent. When I showed her the shop's homepage as proof, she stared intently at her husband's picture in the background. By the way, I visited the shop recently with a friend, but her husband was no longer there. He probably left town. That's marriage fraud. It seems that's what they call it." "I'm sorry for your loss," I said. The mother-in-law, who had been silent, interjected, "You knew, and you didn't tell us? We took care of you for years, even though you couldn't have children. You owe us." At her nonsensical rant, I decided to reveal another truth I had been keeping. "First of all, I'm not the reason we couldn't have kids. Maybe my ex-husband can explain that to you." The mother-in-law looked at her son in shock, and he guiltily lowered his gaze. "When we couldn't conceive after our marriage, we decided to get tested at your insistence. The doctor confirmed there was nothing wrong with me, but my husband had a very low sperm count. The reason we couldn't have children was because of him." When the mother-in-law asked about the test results, my husband instantly lied, claiming I was the problem. I was angry, but they just said nonsensical things like "you have to support your husband." Refusing to face the truth, my ex-husband joined forces with my mother-in-law, pinning all the blame on me. In the end, he admitted, "Look, I admit I was wrong. Once the house sells, we'll get a good chunk of money. Let's all live happily as a family again." "Well, we've been through a lot, but let's get along from now on," my mother-in-law chimed in. At the end of the day, I realized they probably came here today with the intention of getting their hands on my money. What a disgusting lot. No chance I'm getting back together with you, and I don't consider any of you family, I declared. Upon hearing this, my ex-husband retorted, "Getting a little big for your boots now, aren't you? I know even if you sold the house, you hardly have any savings. How do you plan to survive?" It seemed he had sneaked a peek at my bank account during my single days, and now he had this smug look on his face, as if to say, "Now that you know, do as you're told." To poke fun at my situation, the three of them were smirking at me, so I decided to enlighten them with a little truth. Sure, my savings aren't that much, as I've told you, but instead, I've invested in stocks, enough to live without working for the next few years at least. Their faces looked like they wanted to say, "No way," as they stared at me. Actually, since I was a child, my father was interested in stocks and investments. He had a knack for foreseeing things, and I inherited those skills and built up a decent amount of wealth. The money that supported my parents' move abroad was all from those successful investments, of course. I had kept this secret from my money-grubbing ex-family. Seeing their disappointed faces, I asked, "You can leave now." "Oh, what was it again?" "It's in our divorce conditions. If we approach each other without reason in the future, either party will have to pay a penalty. Are you going to pay, or should I call the police for trespassing?" The word police scared them off, and they left in a hurry. I immediately consulted my lawyer about the day's events and was told to contact him if the ex-family tried to get close again. As expected, once they knew I had assets, my ex-husband sent me a ton of messages begging to reconcile. Nostalgic photos of places we'd been on dates, creepy messages like "I'm here right now thinking about those days" arrived almost daily. I thought about blocking him but kept everything as evidence just in case. And yes, I wondered how he managed to text me all day while supposedly working, but I didn't really care. But when he started trying to contact my friends, I decided enough was enough and sent him a message. "I'll go to the police if this continues." I sent him a photo of our divorce agreement and the nearest police station along with the message. After that, the messages stopped and I never heard from my ex-husband again. I thanked my lawyer and he dropped a bombshell. Apparently, my ex-husband planned to live off his sister's new husband and had quit his job when she remarried. He was a fool for leaving a decent job at a decent company. "You asked for the documents. They should be arriving soon," I told my lawyer. I had placed another request with a lawyer separately from this matter. Soon after we were married, I felt something was off. My precious personal belongings were slowly disappearing. First, it was a necklace that I bought myself when I was single, then a fountain pen my parents had given me as a job-starting present, bags, rings, and above all, the fountain pen were something I cherished greatly. When I talked to my husband about it, he yelled, "Don't worry about losing things." Suspicious, I installed a surveillance camera without telling my husband. What it captured was my husband and mother-in-law rummaging through my closet grinning. Once my sister-in-law moved back in, the footage showed 3 people instead of 2. Taking advantage of my silence, their actions escalated. They were selling my personal belongings surreptitiously for money, fueling their actions. They probably saw the balance in my bank book at that time. It continued until the divorce, so I collected plenty of physical evidence. Just as they thought I wouldn't claim anything, I filed for damages and compensation for emotional distress due to their actions. They must be panicking right now, but it's their own doing. As for what happened to the 3 of them, my sister-in-law's ex-husband found out about this incident, and it seems he took custody of their daughter. Seeing how my sister-in-law didn't seem to care for her daughter, I felt relieved. Just a while ago, I saw the daughter-in-law with her ex-husband happily holding hands and shopping. She had a happy smile on her face, something I never saw when she was at my in-laws. The 3 of them, who wanted to live comfortably, apparently applied for welfare, but they were naturally refused as they were healthy and nothing else. As for my husband, his pride kept him from finding another job. Eventually, he went to his old workplace and begged on his knees, but they had been hoping for him to quit and ended up calling the police, which he hated. He had to work, but it seems he could only find day labor jobs. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law had to pay me compensation, so they both started part-time jobs at a nearby supermarket. But the 2 of them, who had hardly worked before, are struggling with the unfamiliar work. Maybe it's a coincidence, but since they started, the supermarket sales have dropped significantly. They got quite a strong nickname, the plague bringing mother and daughter. By the way, the marriage camera is still at large. I thought they owned the house they were living in, but it was actually a rental. Unable to pay the rent, the three of them moved to a rundown apartment that was infamous in the neighborhood. Their living is hand to mouth, and it seems they're always fighting. The other day, the police were called because their fighting was too loud. As for me, thanks to their help, I sold the house and used the money as capital to start a new apparel company with a colleague from my old job. Recently, we've been gaining more customers and even featured in magazines and TV. Being able to return to the job I love is the happiest thing for me. Oh, and there's one more thing. I've met a man through work, and we're getting married. His parents and siblings are very kind, and they've been treating me very well. What's more, we're expecting a baby, and I'll be the mother I've always dreamed of being. Next year, I'm the happiest I've ever been in my life right now. My name is Alyssa Johnson. I'm 23 years old, and I've been working at my father's company. I'm also married to Nathan, who's 29, and we've been together for 2 years. We have a 1-year-old son, Leo. Nathan often suggests I should leave my job at my father's company, mainly because he doesn't like my parents. He seems to be bothered by my father's lack of formal education and the small, somewhat run-down company he runs, which manufactures screws and small components. Nathan doesn't want to be associated with it. In contrast, I admire my father for his hard work, courage in the face of challenges, and genuine care for his employees. I have no plans to leave my father's company. Nathan also seems to dislike that I respect my father more than him. One morning, while having breakfast with Nathan and our son, Leo, he brought up the topic again. Alyssa, you should consider a job at a bigger company. You graduated from a prestigious university and you're beautiful. I'd love to boast about you at work, but I can't because of where you work now. Besides, I earn enough for us. Why don't you consider staying home instead? These conversations always end the same way, with me telling Nathan I won't quit my father's company. Typically, Nathan responds with remarks like, "You're the only one in the world who doesn't listen to me," or, "If you keep this up, it will be harder for us to stay together." Then he usually leaves the room. Later, he often does something petty to upset me and then gloats, asking if I'll listen to him now. Though divorce has crossed my mind, I can't bring myself to go through with it. Both our families get along well and love Leo dearly. My father and father-in-law are good friends and spend time golfing and fishing together. My mother and mother-in-law enjoy art exhibitions together. Both sets of parents have provided Leo with a loving environment that I wouldn't want to disrupt. My feelings for Nathan have faded, and I no longer enjoy sharing a bed with him. Since Leo was born, I've been sleeping in Leo's room with the door locked. Nathan used to barge in and argue about my job, scaring Leo with his loud voice. Now he stays away at night, but I keep the door locked just in case. This morning, as usual, Nathan harassed me for not quitting my father's company. Instead of coming home for dinner, he went out drinking with colleagues and sent me a photo of himself smiling with a female coworker. This doesn't bother me or make me feel insecure. He messaged me saying, "This is how I blow off steam because you won't listen to me. Quit your father's company now." I wanted to ignore his message, but for the sake of our families and Leo, I responded, "I just wanted you to come home and have dinner with us." His reply was dismissive. "Must have been tough, huh? I'm coming home now." I regret marrying Nathan. Though he's intelligent, his behavior is immature and frustrating. Then one day, Nathan happily announced, "I might be getting promoted soon," Nathan said with excitement. "Wow, that's great." I replied, "Did that recent deal go through?" "Not finalized yet, but it's as good as done. The boss will be thrilled, maybe even cry with joy. The director who used to be so high and mighty will have to bow down to me now, haha." That day, Nathan surprisingly didn't urge me to quit my job at my father's company. Instead, he headed off to his own workplace while I left home with Leo to go to my office. As usual, I dropped Leo off at my parents' house nearby before going to work. Upon arriving at work, my coworker Jake hurried over to me. "Good morning, Alyssa. The boss seems unusually upset today. Did something happen? Everyone's worried about him." Hearing this, I immediately went to the room labeled Invention Room, where my father was. Inside, I found a young man in his 20s sitting on the sofa, his face streaked with tears. My father, looking more furious than I had ever seen him, was sitting across from the young man. "Sorry, Alyssa, I can't spare the time to chat right now, my father said curtly. Everyone's worried about you. What's going on? I asked, concerned. Apologizing for his abruptness, my father invited me to join the conversation. As I took a seat next to my father and looked at the young man's tear-streaked face, he stood up and introduced himself. Nice to meet you. I'm Scott. I'm sorry for causing any trouble, Scott said apologetically. I asked him, what happened, Scott? Scott began explaining his situation. He works at an electrical machinery manufacturer and had recently been promoted to assistant leader for a new machinery project. However, the designated leader didn't attend meetings or go to the field, essentially serving as a figurehead. The team members preferred it this way as it made their work easier. Scott found himself fulfilling the leader's responsibilities. Scott mentioned that some components from my father's company were chosen for his project. He visited my father's company without an appointment and in a disrespectful manner, demanded to speak to the CEO. His appearance, marked by unkempt hair and multiple rings, didn't sit well with my father's secretaries, Jackson and Randy. They asked Scott to adjust his attitude and appearance before returning. Unaware of what was wrong with his demeanor, Scott went back to his company and spoke to his boss, who reacted angrily. Don't let them walk all over you. Assert yourself and tell them we're using their parts, his boss said. Eager to meet his colleagues' demands and use my father's company's components, Scott returned to my father's company. This time, he approached Jackson and Randy more respectfully, asking, please tell me how I can improve my approach. My father happened to overhear the conversation and invited Scott into the meeting room for a discussion. We don't judge people by their appearances, my father began. I believe they were trying to teach you workplace etiquette, my father explained. Jackson and Randy nodded in agreement and began instructing Scott on professional conduct. When you visit other companies, they often judge your entire organization based on your presentation. Which type of company do you think would be better received? One where people are well-dressed and courteous, or one that isn't? They asked. Scott answered, the former, and apologized, promising to start anew. After making an appointment, Scott returned with a more polished appearance, back straight, hair neatly styled, and no accessories. As we spoke with him, we saw his sincerity and dedication to his work, not just in terms of components, but also his willingness to collaborate and share ideas. This led to successful cooperation between young members of Scott's company and my father's. They frequently sought advice from us, and progress was made on a new prototype over 6 months. But just as the project neared completion, the leader of Scott's team took all the prepared presentation materials and promoted a favored young female employee, removing the assistant leader from his position. The team and collaborators strongly opposed this, but were silenced with threats of spreading rumors and making their work life difficult. Upon hearing this, my father was enraged. Jackson, who had been listening, commented, those rumors are just lies, right? You shouldn't be scared of them. Scott explained that the assistant leader's removal was due to reporting a violation of working hours to the HR department. Despite facing severe warnings, he stood his ground. Scott returned to my father's company because he was frustrated with the changes and wanted to discuss everything. You should leave that company and come work for us, right, boss? Jackson suggested. My father, impersonating a character from an iconic Western movie, made everyone but Scott burst into laughter. Scott responded, despite the serious work you do, you all seem to enjoy yourselves. I've always admired that, and I want to work with you all, he said with tears in his eyes as he bowed to my father. As I listened to Scott's story, something continued to bother me, prompting me to ask him a question. I asked, what's the name of your company? And when Scott responded, it turned out to be the same machinery manufacturing company where my husband worked. Hesitantly, I asked further, can I ask the name of your team leader? As I had feared, Scott answered, his name is Nathan Johnson. My father and I exchanged a shocked glance and held our heads in disbelief. After a moment of silence, Randy commented, I knew I'd heard that name before. It's Alyssa's husband. I explained to Scott, I'm sorry, but Nathan is my husband. Scott responded, he's the one who gave me the opportunity to work at this company, so I'm actually grateful to him for that. Jackson seemed to have a concern on his mind and asked cautiously, given that Alyssa's here, does the favored female employee have any connection to your husband? Scott looked at me nervously, unsure of how to proceed. I reassured him, Don't worry about it. I'm in a sham marriage with my husband. I don't have feelings for him anymore. This revelation took my father by surprise. After apologizing to my father for causing him distress, I opened up about all the difficulties I've been experiencing every day, explaining why I hadn't spoken up sooner. He listened and finally understood the situation. No wonder my grandson Leo hasn't been very affectionate with me then, he said. He went on to say, I've lived a life I'm proud of, so I don't care what anyone says about me, but it must be tough for Alyssa to keep hearing negative things about her parents. Don't worry though, I'll maintain my relationship with their parents since they're family and friends. If you ever want to come home, you're always welcome. His words lifted a weight off my shoulders. Jackson then asked Scott, and what about the relationship between your husband and the favored female employee? Scott replied, there are no concrete facts, just rumors circulating. But several employees have witnessed the two of them coming out of meeting rooms or document rooms together. A few have even seen them going out for lunch. At this point, Randy made a phone call. Hey, I have a situation I'd like you to investigate. Can you come to the office right now? He asked the person on the other end of the line. Once he hung up, he said, I'm going to have a friend from a private investigation agency look into this. Jackson then picked up the phone and started dialing, saying, hello. I need a lawyer who specializes in divorce cases involving infidelity. Can you come to the office right now? Thanks, Jackson said into the phone. As Jackson and Randy made progress with their calls, my dad chuckled and said, your ability to take swift action is one of your greatest strengths. Scott offered to keep a close watch on Nathan and the favored female employee for the time being. Everyone then returned to their respective work areas, and my father reassured the concerned employees by saying, I'm sorry for causing you all worry. But it looks like we can find humor in a situation now. Thank you as always. The employees' smiles returned, and the usual lively atmosphere was restored in the workplace. My father approached me and asked, may I discuss the recent events with your in-laws? I responded, I just want you to encourage them to continue visiting and showering Leo with affection as they always have. By early afternoon, the private detective and the lawyer arrived to discuss our future plans in the planning room. The meeting's contents were shared with everyone present, and it was decided that Jackson, who had returned to the company, would relay the meeting's details to me after work. When I went to pick up Leo from my parents' house, I explained the situation from my perspective, apologizing for not revealing my husband's true nature sooner. I felt guilty for trampling on my parents' beliefs that my marriage was happy. My mother, instead of being upset, seemed relieved. Now we need to prepare a room for my daughter and grandson, she said, smiling. She remembered the disdainful look my husband had given my father's company when he first saw it and had suspected he wasn't a good man. I wish you had told me sooner. The next day, Jackson received a call from Scott on his smartphone. Scott had submitted his resignation, explaining that he planned to spend his remaining time at the company on miscellaneous tasks and transitioning his responsibilities without taking any paid time off. The company accepted his resignation, but members of the project team visited the HR department to declare, we've all violated the company's work rules like Mr. Scott, so please discipline us as well. With resignation letters in hand, the HR department was thrown into chaos. By the end of the regular workday, my husband had already left the office. A meeting was held in the large conference room, attended by the company president, department heads, and the remaining project team members, including Scott. It was revealed that my husband, the team leader, had not attended any meetings or been present at work, nor had he contributed to the project. Instead, he took credit for the work the team had completed, removed Scott from his role as assistant leader, and replaced him with a favored female employee. The company president expressed deep regret at the situation if the allegations were true. Scott suggested that no immediate action be taken until all evidence was gathered. Since the sister-in-law of one of the company's clients was conducting an investigation using a private detective, it was proposed that nothing be said to my husband without concrete evidence. The company agreed to wait for the evidence and then question my husband before deciding on disciplinary action. They asked the team members to hold off on submitting their resignations. Unaware of these serious developments, my husband, who usually returned home on time, came home around 9 p.m. after Leo had gone to bed. He began ranting about how ineffective everyone else was, boasting that he had been working overtime to ensure the project's success. He believed everyone was jealous because he was on the path to becoming a department head after the project's success. Knowing the truth, I couldn't help but chuckle at his delusions. In his good mood, I offered him a few compliments, which I didn't really mean. He seemed to relish imagining himself as the future department head, basking in the admiration and envy of others. My husband kept grinning, fueled by his fantasies. Meanwhile, at work, Scott's plan was set in motion. The team members began to shower my husband with continuous praise. "Mr. Department Head," they teased, "not quite yet, but the CEO seems very optimistic about the project." They flattered him with comments like, "How can we become as competent as you, Mr. Johnson?" My husband was overjoyed and caught up in his newfound popularity, becoming increasingly less guarded. Then, as planned, we managed to capture videos of his affair with a female employee using hidden cameras in the document and conference rooms. In just 5 days, the detective agency and Scott amassed substantial evidence of his infidelity. All that remained was to prove my husband hadn't created the project documents himself. This task was straightforward. Scott had saved the documents on a USB drive, which would clearly expose the truth if the company questioned him and my husband about their contents. Scott and other team members submitted all the evidence to the company. Unaware of any of this, my husband returned home in high spirits. He launched into his fantasies, saying, "I'm definitely going to be named department head." The CEO had a long conversation with the current head, and then the head looked at me. He must have told him, "I'd rather have Mr. Johnson's head in charge than any incompetent person." He continued his daydreams. "This will widen the gap between your father's company and mine even more. You should quit your job and become a full-time housewife. You'll be the wife of a department head," he said. I responded loudly, feigning anger. "Your parents would be furious if they knew you were mocking mine. You'd have their close friends. I take pride in my work and enjoy it. I'm not quitting." My husband snapped back, "Never invite your parents to our family events again. If you don't like it, get out. I'll have women lining up for me once I become department head." When I asked if he was certain, he retorted, "What do you mean? Don't contact me again." So I replied, "All right, I'll leave," and had him sign the divorce papers I prepared. The next morning, I watched him leave for work in silence. Then I called my father to help me move. As my father, his coworkers, and I loaded our belongings onto a truck, my in-laws arrived offering their assistance. "We came to help," they said, and we exchanged apologies. "Thank you for allowing us to be Leo's grandparents. Our fool of a son is disowned. We're counting on you now," Alyssa, they said, bowing their heads. I held their hands and bowed in return, expressing my gratitude. My father said, "Let's hurry and move everything so we can relax at home," to which my father-in-law agreed. "Let's do that," as they both continued to help with the move. Once we finished the move, in front of my parents and in-laws, I showed them the signed divorce papers and explained that I was parting ways with my husband. My in-laws repeatedly apologized, but my father reassured them, saying, "Let's keep getting along, Ken," and gave my father-in-law a friendly pat on the knee. My mother chimed in, "Mary, let's continue our embroidery sessions together. There's an art exhibition next week. Let's go." She gave my mother-in-law an affectionate pat on the knee. "Ken, Mary, why don't you stay at our house tonight for some drinks?" My father offered, bringing out the beverages. My father-in-law accepted. "Thanks, we'll take you up on that offer tonight." The cordial interaction brought my parents and in-laws even closer, without me feeling like I was intruding. That night, I decided to go to Leo's room and rest. The next day, my husband was summoned to a conference room by the company's executives, including the CEO and department head. Also present were Scott, the team members, and the female employee he had an affair with. The CEO conducted the hearing himself, questioning my husband about whether he had tried to claim the project as his own without contributing to it and stealing the completed documents. Since Scott and the team members were there, my husband couldn't find an excuse and remained silent. The CEO, growing impatient, demanded loudly, "Well, what do you have to say?" Under pressure, my husband quickly admitted to his actions. Next, the CEO questioned him about why he had demoted Scott from the sub-leader position and replaced him with the female employee. My husband tried to justify it by saying she was more capable than Scott. The department head countered, "You're saying the woman who only serves tea and makes copies is more capable than Mr. Scott." My husband bit his lip, lowering his head in silence. The CEO then projected still images from video footage taken in the conference room and document room, leaving both my husband and the female employee, Alice, looking pale. The CEO asked Alice, "Miss Ford, what is the meaning of this?" Alice responded without hesitation, explaining that Mr. Johnson had promised her an easier time at work if they were together, but she hadn't been serious about the relationship since she already had a boyfriend. "I just considered it part of the job," she added. My husband, enraged by her response, exclaimed, "You had a boyfriend? You cheating woman. You've ruined my life." Alice snapped back, "You have a wife, Tim Nathan. Don't get mad at me." The argument between them escalated, prompting the CEO to interrupt. "Enough. The fact-finding is over. I'll inform you of the disciplinary action later. Until then, Mr. Johnson and Miss Ford, you are both suspended and must stay home." With that, the CEO left the conference room, and everyone else followed suit. My husband was eventually reassigned to a manual job in the basement, sorting documents in what was known as the company's useless department. Alice, who struggled at the office after her boyfriend found out about the affair, eventually resigned. A lawyer had drawn up an agreement for them to sign, with my husband required to pay me $3 million and Alice $2 million in compensation. Both had to take out loans from finance companies to make the payments. Additionally, my husband agreed to pay an extra $5,000 per month for Leo's child support. A few months later, my husband, now disowned by his parents, was working 2 jobs, one at a convenience store during the day and another as a security guard at night. He lived alone in a run-down apartment and looked much older than his years. As someone who saw him remarked, he appeared to be around 60 years old. My name is Olivia Nelson, and I've recently hit the milestone of turning 30. Today, I want to share a pivotal moment in my life. I have an older brother named Scott, 2 years my senior. From a young age, Scott embodied what many would call a pretty boy. His features were sharply defined, and his handsome face often sparked rumors in our neighborhood about talent scouts from modeling agencies seeking him out. He was the quintessential heartthrob, likable, intelligent, and quick-witted. Our parents and the adults around us all adored him. On the flip side, I seemed to be the odd one out in our family, always carrying a bit of extra weight. Despite having similar facial features to Scott, being chubby detracted from any charm I might have had. I was reserved, not particularly engaging, and tended to keep to myself, missing out on the accolades showered upon my brother for his intelligence. It didn't take long for people to start labeling us as polar opposites, a contrast that seemed to be echoed by our parents. As we grew, the differences in treatment became increasingly evident. While Scott received praise and attention, I often felt overlooked. Hand-me-downs became my norm, even down to ill-fitting shoes that caused me to stumble more times than I care to remember. The only thing I cherished was a backpack given to me by my grandparents before they passed away, a rare gift just for me. As Scott advanced to a prestigious private middle school, my parents beamed with pride, while I found myself relegated to a public school with minimal expectations placed upon me. Money for my education was deemed too scarce, a stark reminder of where I stood in my parents' eyes. I began to question why I was the only one treated differently, but my inquiries fell on deaf ears. Puberty brought with it a growing awareness of the disparities in our household. My mother's priorities seemed to lie elsewhere, leaving me to tend to chores while she socialized with friends. Even when I sought solace in friendships, my father's retort was always the same. "What about the household chores?" Scott, bless him, tried to intervene on my behalf, but his efforts fell short against the indifference of our parents. As Scott focused on his high school entrance exams, his presence in our home dwindled, leaving me to navigate the tumultuous waters of adolescence alone. The absence of my parents at parent-teacher meetings became the norm, a stark reminder of where their priorities lay. In 3 years of middle school, they attended just one meeting, a telling sign of the divide within our family. When I was in my first year, my parents attended the parent-teacher meeting, but during my second year, they stopped coming. By the crucial 3rd year, when exams were just around the corner, they still didn't show up. My homeroom teacher expressed concern about possible issues at home, but I dismissed it. Although I recognized that my situation was far from normal, I didn't face physical abuse from my parents. I struggled to articulate the ongoing emotional distress I was experiencing, Admitting that my own parents didn't seem to care for me felt too humiliating. The incidents continued, with one particularly hurtful occurrence on New Year's Eve. At the end of that year, my parents took my brother to my mom's hometown, leaving me behind. Up until then, I had always been included in these trips, but that year they told me, "You're a student preparing for exams, so stay home and study." It felt like just an excuse, as if they simply found me bothersome. Alone on New Year's Eve, I didn't want to ask my friends to hang out, as it would reveal how isolated I was. Instead, I stayed home, keeping my feelings inside. I watched the Grammys, switched to the New Year's Eve specials, and went to bed after shedding a few tears. The next morning, I was startled awake by the insistent ringing of the doorbell. It was too early for my family to be back, so I anxiously checked the doorbell camera. To my surprise, my uncle and aunt from my mom's side stood at the door. I rushed over, my hair a mess from sleep, and asked them what was going on. "Olivia, you need to leave this house," my uncle stated firmly. "We've already spoken with your mother, and we'll handle the paperwork. Don't worry." I was stunned by his abruptness and struggled to process what he was saying. "Wait, what do you mean?" I asked, thrown off by his demeanor. "Olivia, we want you to become our daughter, if you don't mind," my aunt said gently, her eyes filling with tears. "We don't have children of our own, but we've always thought of you as our daughter since the day you were born." At the time, I couldn't grasp the full scope of the situation. My aunt and uncle, who were unable to have children due to illness, had always doted on me whenever they visited. They cared for me deeply and had often criticized the way my parents treated me. While my parents were preoccupied with my older brother, my aunt played with me and my uncle showered me with the latest treats and adorable clothes. My fondest memories were with them, far more than with my parents. My uncle, who had just come from speaking with my parents, began by saying, "Your parents have no intention of letting you go to high school. They plan for you to start working at 16 to help fund Scott's college education. We can't ignore this, Olivia. You have the right to an education and a chance to pursue your own dreams." I was shocked and hurt by the revelation that my parents were willing to sacrifice my future for my brother's benefit. It explained why they hadn't attended any parent-teacher meetings in recent years. They simply weren't invested in my aspirations. As I crumbled under the weight of this news, my aunt and uncle knelt beside me, offering comfort. "We may not be your biological parents, and you might feel uncertain about this, but we will ensure your happiness," they assured me. Tears welled up in my aunt's eyes as she hugged me tightly, both of us overwhelmed with emotion. "Olivia, you have the right to be happy, and we should have come for you sooner. If you're okay with it, we want you to become our daughter," my uncle added, his gaze intense and earnest. As I listened to their heartfelt words, I realized this was the first time I had ever felt truly wanted by adults. Though I was just over 10 years old, I knew what I needed to choose for my own future. I made the decision to officially become their adopted daughter. Fast forward 10 years since they welcomed me into their home, my aunt and uncle have poured boundless love upon me and filled my life with countless joyful experiences. My aunt delighted in selecting clothes for me, treating me to shopping sprees on holidays, while my uncle, who had always longed for father-daughter bonding, saved a bottle of wine from the year I was born for my 21st birthday celebration. Together we embarked on memorable trips, with my uncle's childlike enthusiasm leading us to zoos and aquariums, even during my high school years. These moments were etched in my heart as irreplaceable treasures, experiences I never shared with my biological parents. Initially, I referred to them as aunt and uncle, but over time, they became my parents in every sense. Now, I address them as mom and dad. It was through them that I learned of the hurtful remarks my biological parents made when they visited, belittling my appearance and intelligence. Hearing this fueled my aunt and uncle's determination to provide me with the love and support I deserved. When my parents threatened to deny me a high school education, the idea of adoption surfaced, thanks to my aunt's sober intervention on New Year's Eve. I am forever indebted to my aunt, who rushed to my side that fateful night, and I am determined to repay my wonderful parents for their unwavering love and sacrifice. I endeavored to excel in my studies, setting a goal to build a future that would make my aunt and uncle proud. Despite the challenges I faced during my high school entrance exams, I persevered, driven by the desire to honor their kindness. Entering a prestigious public university was a significant achievement, but it was only the beginning of my journey to repay my parents' love. With dedication and hard work, I obtained a weather forecaster license during my college years and now proudly appear on television as a weather forecaster. Yet, even as I pursue my dreams, my ultimate goal remains unchanged: to ensure my parents' comfort and happiness in the years to come. I wanted to make my aunt and uncle proud, so I dedicated myself to dieting and exercising. Now I've earned the nickname the Beautiful Weather Forecaster. Reflecting on my journey, I realize I always shared my brother's good looks and had the potential to be just as attractive. My aunt and uncle have always expressed pride in me, but now I feel I have truly become a daughter they can be genuinely proud of. I have so much gratitude to repay, and I'm determined to keep pushing myself to excel. Just as I was thinking about how much I've achieved, my biological parents suddenly appeared before me. "Olivia, you've grown so much. You've become such a fine young lady," they exclaimed, tears in their eyes as they embraced me. I was leaving the TV station to get into my car when this happened, and I was taken off guard. It had been so long since I'd seen them that I barely recognized them at first. "We were shocked to see you on TV. Scott said it was Olivia. We never expected you to become such a beautiful woman and a weather forecaster." "That's incredible," my father said, patting me on the shoulder as if I were still his daughter. "Yes, just as expected of our daughter. We are so proud," they continued. I couldn't hide my displeasure and glared at my parents, but they seemed unbothered by my reaction. "Since we're here, why don't we have a meal at the fancy restaurant just down the street? You must be earning a lot as a weather forecaster, right?" they continued. Their sudden reappearance felt intrusive, like they'd been waiting for me, and their suggestion of a meal at an upscale restaurant made it seem as though they were trying to freeload. I wouldn't allow them to take advantage of me. I needed to find a way to drive my parents away, to ensure they wouldn't want to intrude on my life again. As I pondered this, a plan began to form in my mind. "Mom, Dad, it's great to see you. But I actually have another job today, so I can't go out to eat. Sorry," I lied smoothly. Of course, I didn't have another job lined up, but I did have a plan involving my beloved aunt and uncle. "Oh, that's unfortunate," my mom remarked, a slight click of her tongue. "Could you maybe share your contact information? I'm organizing a small party for my birthday soon, and I'm inviting people from the TV station. It'll be fancy, with plenty of delicious food. I'd love to invite you." Upon hearing this, my parents' eyes noticeably lit up. "Really? Oh, how lucky we are," my dad exclaimed. "And there will be actors there too, right?" "Of course," I replied smoothly, hiding my amusement. "There will be actors, and it's going to be quite the event." A month later, as planned, I arranged for a birthday party at a rented venue. While the gathering was small, a good number of people attended, lured by the promise of a glamorous affair. My parents arrived, eager and waving, acting as if they wanted everyone to know they were my parents, an irritating habit of theirs. "Dad, Mom, welcome," I greeted them, masking my irritation with a smile. "Could you head to the dressing room right away? They'll help you with everything, from your clothes to makeup. Your outfits are lovely, but we also have rental designer clothes available. Enjoy the atmosphere while you're here." At my suggestion, my parents' faces lit up with joy, their excitement palpable. It was clear they couldn't wait to try on the designer clothes. Oh, how easily they were swayed by the allure of luxury. "I hardly ever get the chance to wear these outfits. I wonder if they'll suit me," my mom remarked with a chuckle. "Haha, Mom, you've put on a little weight," my dad teased. "Oh, stop it," she scolded. While they exchanged banter, I offered them flattery, saying, "You both still look young and beautiful, so anything will suit you." It seemed they had been waiting for a compliment, and they both nodded in agreement. In the past, I feared being disliked more than I already was. I couldn't understand my parents' motives, but now it was clear they were quite superficial. They craved high quality and luxurious things, easily swayed by popular trends. Once they had their hair and makeup done, my parents returned to the party venue in high spirits. My mother wore a pale pink mini dress that exposed her shoulders, a style more suited to a younger woman. The sagging skin on her knees revealed her true age. My father chose a bright red suit with a flashy tie adorned with yellow and green geometric patterns. He was the only one in the venue wearing such a flashy outfit, even though there was no formal dress code. The clothes were indeed designer labels, but they were secondhand. I had chosen and provided the outfits myself. I wanted my parents to wear these today, as they reminded me of a family party from my childhood. When I mentioned this, neither the makeup artist nor the costume staff questioned it. In truth, I had no memories of attending such a party with my parents, but my parents believed anything labeled designer without question. In the past, my parents would heed my exceptional brother's words, so long as they weren't about me. Now, they were the ones on the receiving end of my praise, with the label of outstanding now applied to me. As the party began, it was my turn to take the stage and deliver a speech as the guest of honor. Before I went up, I addressed my parents. I have a message for both of you in my speech today, so please listen carefully, I said as I held their hands. They looked at me with surprise and asked, "What?" But their expressions remained happy as I ascended the stage. Thank you all for joining me at my birthday celebration today. I'd also like to express my gratitude to everyone who helped organize this event. I began formally. My friends teased me, calling out, "You're so formal. That's not like you." I jokingly replied, "I'm just being myself," before turning to address my parents. "They're here today, right over there," I said, pointing in their direction. The lighting staff spotlighted my parents as I continued. These are the same parents who had the audacity to appear on TV and even set an ambush for me, despite abandoning me during my teenage years. A murmur spread through the crowd at my statement, as I had never discussed my past with anyone other than close friends. "Olivia, how could you say such a thing?" my mother exclaimed, jumping up while my father remained stunned into silence. Since I was old enough to start kindergarten, these two constantly compared me to my high-performing older brother, Scott, and always favored him over me, I explained. I was the one who never received treats, had to wear Scott's hand-me-down clothes until I was in grade school. Despite all this, I still loved my parents dearly. During middle school, they began imposing household chores on me and eventually declared they wouldn't allow me to attend high school. They wouldn't even attend parent-teacher conferences, I continued. That's when my caring uncle and aunt stepped in and decided to adopt me. Speaking about myself in this way feels odd, but it's the truth. My uncle and aunt have repeatedly reassured me with love, telling me that I am not a bad child. Their support helped me build confidence and overcome my shyness, shaping me into the positive person I am today. The contrast between my cheerful demeanor and my difficult past was striking for the audience, causing immediate murmurs of disbelief and outrage. How could they show up at their daughter's birthday dressed like that? The crowd began to criticize my parents. Unable to handle the scrutiny, my parents hung their heads and trembled. Despite everything, I am now grateful to my biological parents. Their actions ultimately led me to find my true parents, my uncle and aunt, who enveloped me in the warmth of a loving family. My biological parents stared at me, expecting a turn in the story where they would be acknowledged as important. Instead, I offered them a quiet, smiling look. "Mr. Treasure from the Daily Info, are you here? Could you make this story and the accompanying photos into an article? Consider it a birthday present for me." As I called out to my friend from the magazine, he had already started snapping pictures of my parents. Hey, stop it, don't take pictures." My parents frantically tried to hide their faces. Even now, they couldn't face the consequences of their actions. "You always made me do things I didn't want to do, even when I pleaded with you to stop," I shouted. "You can't impose on others and expect to avoid consequences yourself." At my words, my mother's eyes welled up with tears. "I'm sorry. If you publish this article, it will harm us, your mother and father." "You wouldn't want that, would you, Olivia?" I was astonished by their nerve. Did they really think I still considered them my parents? They had abandoned me, neglecting their duties as parents. My true parents are my uncle and aunt. They are the ones I see as my mother and father. I warned them never to interfere in my life again. As memories flooded back and my gratitude for my uncle and aunt swelled, tears streamed down my face. Seeing my emotional state, the attendees quickly escorted my biological parents out of the venue. This time, it was truly over. I had finally cut all ties with those individuals for good. Reflecting on my achievements and the support from my uncle and aunt, I shed a few more tears, feeling a sense of liberation and accomplishment. Following the incident, a magazine editor asked if I was okay with how things unfolded. I affirmed my decision, urging them to proceed with the story. The resulting article on my upbringing was picked up by various TV shows and quickly gained attention. Concerns about my image being tarnished were unfounded. Instead, the story painted me as a modern Cinderella making a dramatic turnaround, and my reputation soared. On the other hand, my biological parents, let's reluctantly call them that, faced severe repercussions after the story was published. They became outcasts in our community and eventually decided to move. Gossip spread to my father's workplace, forcing him to resign. My mother, who had been a homemaker, was now unemployed. My brother Scott kept me updated on their situation, revealing they were living off their savings. Though Scott had initially hoped we could live together again, he soon understood that staying with my adoptive family was the right choice for me. Scott remained a constant source of support throughout my college years, helping guide me in my studies. He ultimately chose to sever all ties with our biological parents after my story was published, jokingly stating he might only see them again at their funeral. Knowing Scott, he might not even attend that. 5 years have since passed. I married Mr. Treasure, who was working at the magazine that published my story, and we now have a pair of twins, a boy and a girl. As a mother, I am dedicated to ensuring my children are treated equally and grow up in a happy, loving environment, just as my aunt and uncle did for me, and as Scott has always watched over me from afar. I want my children to grow up kind and gentle, like my own family. Besides raising my children, I am committed to repaying the kindness shown to me by my uncle and aunt. This year, I surprised them with a trip to Oregon for our wedding anniversary, which we enjoyed with my husband and children. My aunt and uncle often tell me, "Olivia, you have your own family now. You don't have to do this." But for me, giving back is a source of joy, not obligation. Seeing their happy faces brings meaning to my life. I tell them not to steal my pleasure as I plan our next surprise, maybe a luxurious hotel stay for the whole family. There is still so much we want to do as a family.